Why is my beer so small?
It's because it's higher alcohol.
Yeah, capital outlay, that's what that is.
Yeah, it's 200,000 something.
Yeah, I should be.
Do non-dispatch stuff first, because there are non-dispatch items.
We can probably turn that off pretty
Talk
soon.
session. You know what I mean?
Better do it first. Well, they should be.
Like the non-public safety
need
issues,
that.
because there are like non-public safety issues that are gonna come up.
Which part?
So whatever the open session, so I don't know whether you're doing dispatch altogether at section 7 or.
Well, it's at number 7. We'll wait for, it's not that far into the meeting.
Okay.
No, we won't bring that up.
Yeah.
Being 7 o'clock, I call to order this August 13th, 2018 meeting of the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First, I see we have a overflow group here tonight. Is there anyone still in the back room? Because it's fine if people want to stand at the back.
There is. I can see people.
Anyone who wants to stand at the back of the room is welcome to be included in the room.
The TV's on in the other room.
All right. First, we have a couple of public service announcements. Is anyone here from the straight primary election notification?
Did you mention a broadcast?
Oh. First, before we get to that, Chelmsford Telemedia is broadcasting this meeting live and taping for later viewing. Is there any other members of the press or anyone recording this meeting for audio video from?
The Wilmington Independent.
From the
Wilmington Independent.
Wilmington, very good. Anyone else? All right. The we have a notification for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for the 4th day of September, which is primary day, and there are a number of state offices that will be voted on, including Senator for Congress, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, Secretary of State, Treasurer, Auditor, representatives, councilors, Senator of the General Court, representatives of the General Court, District Attorney, Clerk of Courts, and Registry of Deeds, and we hope that everyone gets out, and we have great weather, and we have a great turnout. There's nothing you can do better than to get out and, choose your candidate so that they can run in the final later on this year.
Just a couple of things kind of related to that, probably it's a good time to mention, is first one is that this Wednesday, August 15th, is the last day to register to vote, to be able to vote in that election. And absentee ballots are available now from town clerk's office.
And there is no early voting for the primary election.
Didn't want to say what we don't have.
Right, just absentee ballots, right. Till noon, it'll actually be till Friday, the Friday before that, because Monday is the legal holiday for Labor Day, and the election is Tuesday morning.
Paul, is there any movement on the state level to allow early balloting this year?
No,
No.
did not pass the
Still out
legislation.
there.
Right.
Okay. The second is remembrance ceremony for 9/11. Anyone here for that?
I can
No?
talk about
Pat,
that.
would you like to?
I would. Chelmsford Military Community Covenant will again be hosting a remembrance ceremony for 9/11. It will be held the Saturday before 9/11, which is Saturday, September 8th. It'll be right out here in front of the 9/11 memorial we have, which is in front of the fire headquarters. 9 o'clock, Saturday, September 8th. It's a solemn ceremony just to remember all those that were affected that day, and to be sure that we never forget that day. So we look forward to seeing a good turnout of residents that day. Thank you.
Thank you. Although it's not listed, there's a candidates night of the League of Women Voters on August 27th.
Mary Francis.
Mary?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, and public service announcement, it's appropriate time. Yeah, I'm representing the League of Women Voters of Chelmsford.
Just
and
who you are?
Mary France. And I hope this isn't news to this board. I hope you've been paying attention. The League of Women Voters of Chelmsford, along with the leagues from Concord Carlisle, Greater Lowell, I think Greater Lowell's in it, Acton area and Westford are holding a candidates night for the 3rd District congressional candidates on 2 weeks from tonight, August 27th, at the Chelmsford Performing Arts Center, beginning at 7 p.m. And we hope everyone will be there. There was a similar forum in Concord 3 weeks ago, and they had a venue with 200, that seated 200, and they had to turn 100 people away. They had 300 people show up. So 100 people were turned away that night, which says that there's a whole lot of interest. As you know, in the Democratic primary, there are 10 candidates. There'll be 10 candidates to choose from on the ballot. I think all of them will be here in Chelmsford. The Republican candidate has been invited. I don't know whether he will be here in Chelmsford. But as interest is coming up on among these candidates, I think it should be a good evening. And of course, the auditorium holds up to 1,000 people. We hope to fill it. And all those people who couldn't get into Concord 3 weeks ago certainly are welcome here, and residents of Chelmsford. So that's my announcement. Any
Thank you.
questions?
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll leave you a few more. I hope all of you have some.
Thank you, Mary.
If you happen to know a place where one of those ought to be posted and it hasn't been, please post it. And if you need more, just get in contact with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. Next, we have open session. Anyone who'd like to speak on any topic before the board. However, if you're here for dispatch, we have a separate place in the meeting. It's coming up early in the meeting, so you won't have to wait too long. But anyone want to talk about something else?
Hi, I'm Kevin Gasilla from Chelmsford, right over by Vinyl Square, Dunstable Road. I'm a new member of the Recycling Committee, and we met on the 2nd of this month, and we reviewed the plastic bag bylaw that the board is looking at. And it agreed pretty much with the suggestion that we had sent forward some months ago. So we're backing that up 100%. We think it's a really good idea. There was one small change about thickness of the plastic that we made a suggestion to change, but that was about it. Everything else lined right up with our suggestions. So I'd just like to remind people of just a couple of things on why we're doing this, because we got a full room here. It's the big one that I like to point out is the litter problem. It's a unique form of litter. These things are so light, everybody notices them in the trees and everything. It's a problem we virtually don't have with other sorts of litter. And they don't biodegrade. That's if they're out there in nature, they stay there. When you put a paper bag into the trash, like you could bury one in your backyard, and you would count in weeks before you could go out there, and it would not be a paper bag anymore. It would be biodegraded into something else, and your tomatoes could be using that to grow themselves. However, you put one of these plastic bags in there, you don't count it in weeks, you count it in centuries. It stays there. Even though it breaks down into microplastics, it does not go away, and those microplastics have a whole bunch of scientific problems in themselves. They hurt wildlife, and they don't get recycled. That's another big issue. The number that I got is like 5.2% of them get recycled overall, but Waste Management Company that we use here has their own figures, and that's only 1% of the ones that go back to ever make it back to the store and get recycled. And the issue with that is, like everything else, when you think of a can getting recycled, it ends up as a usable product that somebody will buy at a decent price, and it gets used. That doesn't happen with these things. Nobody can make any money out of it, so it doesn't get done. And I'm pretty much done on what I've got to say. It's a really good idea. I'm glad to see that Chelmsford is moving ahead with this and taking the lead. There's like, a few weeks ago, it was 81 communities. By tonight, there's probably more that have done this. It didn't make it through the legislature this year on a state thing, and they're dragging their feet on it. Nobody is opposed to it down there, but nobody's putting it as a priority, so it's just not getting done. We don't have any opposition from any of the big chain stores. They're all ready to go with this. Other communities around here have already started moving on it. They're all ready to go. We're going to put a delayed start on this, so anybody who has a small store and has to use up their stocks, that will happen, and then they have a good adjustment period to get this going. So it should, we should have the second draft going on and the process moving forward from there, and thanks for everything, yeah.
I have a couple of questions. How is, like the bags you would get at Demoulas, differ from green trash bags and white tall kitchen bags?
A lot of them aren't. The problem is we're not going to ban everything. These are the free ones that you're getting handed out. They're a problem in the community. If we could get everybody to start moving to purchase on there, because we're not banning any of your personal purchases. This is just the stores decided years ago that this might be a nice convenience, actually in my generation. And it seemed like a good idea at the time. Over time, it turns out not so good. But those purchases you can still make, and it'll be up to you to go in there and say, well, this one is biodegradable, this one is regular plastic, and you'll just have to do that as a consumer. But so because basically there isn't any difference if they make them out of the same plastic. But if you get a thicker grade plastic, then that's more recyclable. And there's other issues out there too. There's like photo biodegradable that some groups have been trying to promote, and they don't really work because they take like 170 days in the sunlight to photo degrade. So if you throw them in a puddle, they don't photo degrade. If they're in the shade, they don't photo degrade. If you bury them in a landfill, they don't photo degrade. So it's just the product might have a use somewhere, but not as a replacement for the one-use bags we're doing now. The best idea is to reuse. Paper bags are better, but there's still a problem with them. You leave a carbon footprint, not a big one, but you still do. What we want is people to reuse bags. And as a matter of fact, the recycling committee is going to be discussing that if this moves forward, which we hope it will. We'll be promoting that use in schools and with the community. We'll probably have a contest to have kids design some bags and all that, and really get the community behind this, because Chelmsford does really good already. It's amazing how well we do, because we're not paying any penalties right now, although that can change. If we don't do as well in the next season, we'll end up getting penalties from our waste management company for putting these plastic bags. This is the major recycling problem in the waste stream, as these things clog the machinery. And Lowell was paying $12,000 a month in penalties, so add that up for a full year, We, because of the good work over at DPW and Nick Parley and our people here doing a good job, we're not paying anything yet, but that could happen if we don't keep that up.
Has your committee thought about anything about, let's say that there's an average homeowner, resident in town who, for one reason or another, ends up with some of these bags, and, they think, well, I can just throw them in the trash anyway, or is there some secondary plan of what they can do with them so that they don't have to face that decision?
Well, what you'll be able to do is ask for if the stores will still be able to offer you paper bags.
Well, let's say we're so close to New Hampshire. Let's say you go up to Nashua and you go to Demoulas up there, and they don't have this, and they give you plastic bags and you take them home, but you feel guilty of just throwing them in the trash. Is there anything that they can do?
There'll be people who do that. There'll be people who do that. New Hampshire's got to get on the ball and get behind it. Massachusetts is leading. Communities around here, Westford's done it, Tingsborough's done it, Lowell's done it. I think Wilmington's done it. You start going I can't even keep up with all the communities that are doing it around here. So
We have some recycling specialized products. Can we do something if someone collects these? And
Staples takes them.
Yeah, Staples takes
Staples
them.
will take
them?
Yeah,
Market
Market
Basket.
Basket does as well.
Any
Does
grocery
it?
store.
You
You
can
bring it
go,
back.
they'll have special recycling at
Yeah.
the front of a
So Demoulas, being a good neighbor,
Yes.
will provide
Yes,
hopefully some sort of container for that purpose.
yeah, they do now. They
They
do
do.
already, yeah.
What I do at mine, Staples.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've been bad.
Heard it here.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
thank you very much.
Yes.
So on the foottails of my friend Kevin, my name is Cynthia Feekers. I'm a resident of 67 Pine Hill Road in Chelmsford in Precinct 7. As a registered nurse of 39 years, I've spent most of my life caring for others. And for those of you that are doing the math, I graduated from Northeastern University College of Nursing when I was 10. So keep that in mind. As part of my lifelong journey towards health, I come to you tonight to ask for your support to better regulate the use of single-use plastic straws and single-use polystyrene containers in our business establishments in Chelmsford. Polystyrene is styrofoam. Both of these requests will require us to change our behaviors. And behavior changes don't come easy and they don't come fast. And that's for those reasons, that's why I would like us to start thinking about this and acting on it as soon as possible. I'm not sure how long ago it was, but at one time Chelmsford didn't have a recycling program. Who would have thought we could recycle cans and bottles? Nobody would ever do that, so we thought, and now we do it all the time. When you approve the citizens' petitions that I put forward to regulate the use of single-use straws and single-use styrofoam containers in our business establishments at your fall town meeting, that won't be implemented until July of 2019. That's a whole year away. As I speak now, tons of plastic is being dumped into our landfills and into our oceans. And it is likely at some point, unless we change our behaviors, there will be more plastic in the ocean than there are fish. And fish is one of our primary nutritional sources of protein. It's also estimated, and Kevin alluded a bit to this, styrofoam, in order to biodegrade, it's estimated that it takes about 500 years to never for styrofoam to biodegrade. I'm not saying that we can eliminate all plastic, and I'm not saying that we should. I'm saying that we should, and I'm not saying that we should starve disabled people who rely on straws to maintain proper nutrition. I'm saying that we need to redesign, we need to reduce, we need to reuse, and we need to recycle. There may be other options, and there are other options right now, and there may be going forward other options as big businesses see this as an opportunity to redesign. I brought with me, and I had more and I forgot, I left them out in the car. This is a styrofoam straw. It's reusable. Oh, no, oh my God. No, this is not styrofoam. That's why I brought him. This is silicone. This is a silicone straw. It's reusable, it's recyclable, it's cleanable. It's actually safer for disabled people, in my professional opinion, than a plastic straw that can be chewed and broken and swallowed. This can be chewed several times, and it's actually quite good. I also have steel straws, stainless steel straws that actually keep my drink colder. I'll be brief and get to the point. I'm asking you to support restricting the use of single-use plastics, straws, and single-use styrofoam containers from our business establishments in Chelmsford. And by doing that, we will educate our community, we will contribute to their overall health, and if we don't have a healthy, clean, safe place to live, then nothing else that we do matters. So it's redesign, reduce, reuse, and recycle. Thank you very much.
Anyone have any questions?
Just a comment before she leaves, because I want to give you a pointer. Your styrofoam, single-use styrofoam also applies to municipal facilities. And why I point that out is the schools use single-use styrofoam in their lunch program. So my advice would be is you probably want to contact the school administration as soon as possible to figure out how that could be achieved in the schools, because otherwise that will likely rear its head at town meeting
So
in
that-
October.
That's a good point, and thank you for that heads up. I actually have a friend who teaches preschool, and she said, well, what do we do about the milk cartons? You know, so I'm a nurse, but I thank you for that
But
heads
it's
up.
the trays that go with the lunches. in the
Absolutely.
schools. I'm just, not saying it isn't solvable, but you don't want to show up
I'm
at town
just
meeting
thinking back
and have
in
that not considered.
No, thank you.
1989, I think, Winchester's public schools banned styrofoam trays, because I remember that. I was in middle school, and one of my neighbors and classmates came forward and was like, styrene stays on your fat cells for your whole life, and it never goes away. You just have it in your body. It just sits there. And so Winchester, got their dishwashers going and had composite trays going through. So, I mean, that was in 1989. It's 2018.
No, but it just
So,
has to be
yeah, thank you.
considered
Thank you
before
very
we're
much.
caught off guard.
One last thing,
Yes.
I don't know if you're aware of it, but at town meeting, anyone who's a resident of town can speak at the microphone and address the town meeting. And so you may want to consider coming in and providing the same dissertation for us.
I'd be delighted, thank you.
We had one mention, United Steelworkers?
No.
No,
Hey, cool.
No. Boy, you don't even know
the
me.
muscles for it.
Hank Cool, Precinct 4, Town Meeting Rep. I know we're gonna tackle the regionalization down the road. I just want clarification. You gonna vote on that tonight, or is
No.
that gonna be September 2nd?
No, one more meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Big guy.
Jim in the back.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Hall. I live at 34 Lovett Lane. I know later tonight you'll be talking about the warrant articles for the October town meeting. One of them will be the Route 40 rezoning plan. And I'm wondering if you folks would consider delaying that till the next town meeting. As an abutter, I got 4 days' notice for the informational meeting. I got the minimum 2 weeks' notice for the official meeting that's going to be the planning board's taking comments from people. We haven't even had the public meeting for the comment. We're talking about putting it on the town meeting for October. I know they've been working with the developer for quite a while, but I'd like to have more than 18 days' notice, and I'd like to have some time, and I know my fellow residents would too, to really understand this issue and find out what our rights are too. It's a plan that was not developed with any community development involvement that I know of, and I wish you guys would slow this process down so that people have a chance to speak. Thank you.
Anyone else?
You asked about the United Steelworkers. Is that on the agenda tonight, or is that for the, I
It's
thought it
just
was-
listed during open session.
Oh,
And we
okay.
have a document.
You do? Okay, well, I'll take a few minutes now then.
Sure.
Okay. I'm Jim Mariolis. I came to the last meeting. Thank you for having me. Obviously, we're going into week 8 of the lockout. I realize when this started, I actually went to the town office and tried to leave a message for the manager. Obviously, if you've been aware of what's going on, we are still out not doing our jobs. As this is going on, there are still some safety concerns. You received the packets. I did have some hard copies I could hand and leave you. But certainly, a couple of examples I just noticed at the Lowell Folk Festival, firsthand witness for dealing with a leak. There was a Merrimack at Central Street, number 45, the Friday of the Lowell Folk Festival, a leak came in, what they call a grade 1. Any of us that have experience know we get called out there. We actively try to find the leak. I witnessed from Saturday morning, the crew was still there. It ranged from anywhere from 22 workers that were there to 25 people. And what were they actually doing? Looking around, I could see that they weren't barring holes, drilling, asking, trying to pinpoint the leak. And again, I don't want to be too technical, but the basis you need to understand is they took measurements apparently to find a fitting and dug a hole, figuring that probably is the leak. And then they dug a second hole. And then they dug a third hole. So it went all weekend. And this road was just paved a week before. And this should have been done by the pre-paved survey, where we find the leak and we repair it. So again, I'm trying to be brief, but it's very important. I come before you, I just witnessed a hit line. We just had, I didn't witness, but it came in last Friday. It was in Burlington. And it appears that the lines were marked incorrectly. The gas blew for over 2 hours. We're going to put in, obviously, complaints. We have 25 complaints, almost, we're going to be up to 27 with the DPU. So we've been actively just doing that. You know, if they're just out there to dig a hole versus trying to find a leak, as I just explained, there's other levels of service are you getting or not getting. I witnessed 2 weeks ago on Thorndike Street in Lowell, contractors putting a new conduit in the sidewalk. They came across it, they nicked the coating on the steel pipe. We observed them trying to repair it. You're supposed to strip the coating down to bare metal. That wasn't done. When they left afterwards, we had to call them back, because again, when we're there, we have a responsibility, and we do. We say something, came back, and they fixed another bubble on the pipe that was scraped. I say those things for being out on the road. They have put sand down valve boxes to restrict our access, to think we are going to tamper with something. It's been 8 weeks. We know our jobs. We want to get back to work. So I come to you again just to make you aware. We can certainly sit with any of you, any officials, what else is going on. But apparently you must be in contact with the company. And if the company's assured you everything is fine, then I guess you have to just take it at that. If not, I urge you to have more oversight out in the field, engage the fire department, your highway departments, because again, we have a position called a foreign opening inspector that goes out actively looking for jobs. He knows the area. Matter of fact, his name is Chuck Kostopoulos in this particular area, and he's done quite a good job for several years. So I just have to give you those examples. And then obviously, after this is done, who's going to pay for this? They've spent an awful lot of money for replacement workers that a lot of them do not come from around here. And when they continue to keep working more and more now, because at some point they have to do regular maintenance work, or they're going to face other fines. Who's going to do that work? If they have their supervisors spread in with some contractors to just respond, because that's how the first few weeks have been going, but as we're going on here, they have to get some more work. So are you getting your level of service? Who's going to come in and change your gas meters? We're asking to be on the cautious side. One last thing I will point out. 2 weeks ago, we had two officials, our two local presidents. I'm the vice president of Local 1212, but our president went out with our international rep to the UK to sit at the shareholders meeting. And certainly our president, John Bonaparte, asked the question. He says, do you think, with everything going on with this lockout, do you think that it's hindering and damaging your reputation to get work done and to get to work with the cities and towns, and you think your public safety can be at its best? And he said it's not the most ideal situation. So you can't, for us not being at our work and our jobs, certainly it could be the most safest if we are. So if there's any other questions, I was hoping to be on the agenda. I thought we had sent that, but if there's any other questions, or I could leave these packets with you with my phone number or contact information. I really appreciate you giving me the time. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions?
Has anybody from the town been speaking to anybody with the company? I mean, he's saying that we have. I don't know if we have or we haven't.
I mean, I've shared correspondence with the board that we received from National Grid by email 2 weeks or so ago. I did have a meeting in Tewksbury about a month ago when this lockout happened. Again, I don't want to get in the middle of a labor dispute, but the
Yeah.
bottom line is, we've been assured by National Grid that the work being performed are by trained and qualified personnel, many in fact who are subcontractors who are utilized even when prior to a lockout. And again, as was noted in the presentation, they're a regulated utility by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in terms of safety and so forth. And we don't, as you said, the only National Grid permits we really issue at this table are for the electrical aspects in terms of roadway openings and so forth.
So basically, it was nothing more than informative.
It was an informative session,
The same as this is.
as this has been to us, and
That's all. No, I mean, I don't think you meant it that way, but it came across like maybe we taking somebody's side. We're not taking anybody's side.
No, I haven't. I just brought up the issue when we first started. And at the time, I did get a response from an admin and saying that we're all set, we don't want to be involved in a labor dispute. So that's why I say that. But certainly, to your point, Mr. Manager, obviously, some of the contractors from NUCO, for example, up in this area, they work under oversight. We have inspectors out there, which we've been locked out as well. And some of those supervisors that also go out with those NUCO contractors that replace the regular mains and services. Again, to my point that I explained, and I can explain in much more depth, I know we don't have the time here, but in Lowell, how we find leaks. They do not find leaks. They don't have that. I still, to this day, after 31 years, I could find, that's what we do. So, to not think has nothing to do with safety, I'm just want to bring this up to you again. There are concerns. Some cities and towns have taken protective actions to issue non-emergency work, not granting permits. Of course, we think that would be a safe action, and that's what we're here for. Any other questions? But by all means, I didn't mean anybody was taking sides.
I just didn't.
Thank you. No, thank you.
To
Thank you for pointing that
clarify
out.
that.
Thank you so much.
I think it would be helpful if we did get that package that you wanted to give us, and we could read a little bit more about it, you know?
I will. And we're up to, there's also 15 cities and towns, most notably Lowell and Haverhill up in the Merrimack Valley here. But again, something as this is going on, you're not fully getting the service. There's no way that, who's going to go to customers' houses to change meters, or they're going to send two people to do one person's job? Who's going to pay for, on so many different levels? There's so many questions here. And yes, we want to get back to work. We offered to work without our contract, to extend it like we have in the past. There's just absolutely no need for this. So thank you so much. If there's any other question, I'm sorry, yes.
I have one question.
Sure.
And maybe it's an opinion question that you're not prepared to answer, and if so, that's fine.
I'll do my best.
On the document that we received, on the back, there are 11 towns listed as requesting that work be held up. Virtually all of them are old towns, highly metropolitan areas, high-density residential, like Medford, Haverhill, Somerville, Lowell, Boston, Everett, Revere, Arlington, Cambridge. I don't see really any names of suburban towns more similar to Chelmsford. Any idea why that is?
No, other than what you said earlier, I mean, maybe some of those towns just, you know, their boards have sought it for safety. I mean, as far as around here, I could tell you if you have infrastructure projects or anything here, to have oversight, a steel pipe still needs to be protected and observed and watched, and no other basis other than if it's some of the older lines for leaks, they take the safety of that. You might not think there's many leaks in Chelmsford, but I can assure you there's probably over 100 what they call grade 3 leaks. There's so many leaks, 1s, 2s, 3s. There is certain work to be seen, and other than that, but as far as the age of those cities and towns, that's pretty much, I think they're also close to each other. They kind of, you know, I thought Lowell is certainly more like some of them as far as the oldest infrastructure, but a line can get hit, I can assure you, when you're doing a new sewer or water line or anything else, sidewalks, anything.
All right, thank you. Anyone else like to speak during open session tonight? All right.
Thank you. Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Next, we have committee vacancies. Ken, can you read the list?
Sure. As it stands right now in the town of Chelmsford, we're looking for 2 people to fill seats at the Agricultural Commission, 1 alternate position for the Board of Appeals, 3 seats available for the CCAA Advisory Committee, 1 for the Center Village Master Plan Implementation Committee, 4 seats for the Civic Committee, 1 for the Community Action Program Committee, 4 associate member positions available for the Council on Aging, up to 21 seats on the Cultural Council, 1 for the Dog Park Advisory Committee, 4 for Energy Conservation Committee, 1 alternate position for the Historic District Commission, 3 Holiday Decorating Committee seats, 1 Middlesex Canal Commission, 1 Military Community Covenant Task Force seat, 1 North Town Hall Advisory Committee. All applicants are welcome for the Parade Committee. 2 personnel board seats, 5 Public Celebration Committee, 4 seats for Recycling Committee. We're looking for 3 people for the Signed Advisory Committee, 2 people for the Skate Park Committee, and finally 1 open seat for the Vinyl Square Strategic Action Plan Committee. If you're interested in serving on any town board or committee, please apply at the town website or contact the town manager's office. Thank you.
Next, we have public hearings. There is one for a wine and multi-beverage restaurant license for Chelmsford Pizza.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, town manager, assistant town manager. For the record, my name's Philip Iliopoulos, attorney here in Chelmsford with law offices at 9 North Road. And I'm here tonight representing George Gianettos, who's sitting in the front row, Chelmsford Pizza. He is the owner of that establishment, bought it in May of this year, and is seeking a beer and wine license from the town and from the state. There's been a long history of a beer and wine license there, going back to when it was Omega Pizza, when it was first opened up, over about 10 years now. I believe the last owner let that license lapse. It was not renewed in December, but we seek to obtain it today. I've got green cards I could hand off to Mr. Bacall. And we're not looking to change the operation at all. It will be the same hours, the same occupancy has been approved by this board under the common vicular's license. Mr. Gianettos has a long history of running these types of establishments going back about 10 years. And this particular establishment he runs with himself, his wife, and his son. So I know you've got a full agenda. I could give you some more information, but I can also open it up to questions to see if the board has any particular questions about the application itself.
Paul, in the package, it seems to be complete. It didn't seem to have any objections at all.
No, it's all been signed off by all the boards and inspectors in the town. There are no concerns from the town departments regarding this application.
And we do a background check.
Yep.
That all came
That's
back.
all came back.
And so he bought it in May,
Yes.
but there was a pizza place. Omega was there till the end of last year.
So
roughly?
Omega, the original owners of Omega Pizza started it back in the late 2000s. They sold it around 2016, 15 timeframe. It stayed in Omega Pizza with the new owners. The new owner had some family problems and ended up closing it down in the fall. So that's why the license was not, sought to be renewed in your December renewals.
So they've been without a license right now for 6 months, right?
Correct, yes. I will be, just as sort of a heads up, I'd like to see if there is no objection from any of the abutters, and the board has no concerns and everything's come back clean. I'd like to request if we could waive the typical 2-week period, given his experience, given the fact that there's been a license there, that there probably would still be a license if it was renewed in December and it would have transferred over with the establishment. So that's something I'd ask the board to consider tonight.
I think there's in general agreement that, provided all the documentation is appropriate, that there really is no need
I would dispute that, Glenn. I mean, I think it has been the policy of this board to continue this is a new beer and wine license.
Well,
to
it
the
could be
next
the
meeting.
policy, but we can take a vote on it.
We can, but I have a couple questions before we get to that point, too.
Sure, absolutely.
And I don't see any reference in here to experience with alcohol. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Mr. Giannetto, if you'd like to come up maybe, and he could talk about his experience in general.
Hello. I have experience. I have my own place in Wichita, Mass. For 20 years. I used to have beer, wine license, so it's nothing new.
Winchendon?
Yeah, Wichita, Mass. So I've been there for 15, 20 years. So
Has beer
used to
and
have
wine
beer.
license for 20 years?
Yeah. So it's nothing unusual or something. I do it for 40 years, so this kind of business. So
You don't have that business anymore? You've moved just to here? You're just here now in Chelmsford?
yes,
Is that right?
yeah, I sell them years ago. So a couple of years ago. So
Well, the ABC does a thorough background on this too, right? So
Right, we'll have to submit the application to the ABCC, and then in reference to Philip's comment, your next meeting is not in 2 weeks, it's in 4 weeks.
4 weeks, right.
So if we wait, it's 4 weeks, then how long does it take for him to hear back from the ABC?
Could be, that's undeterminate. That could be several weeks. Yeah. Yeah.
You never know.
Could be several weeks. Could be several weeks.
When it comes to a retail establishment like this, you can lose, to me, you always lose business whenever things like this get held up.
This is the location that's previously held the license.
Right.
We're not going to issue it until we get an okay from the ABC.
Right, we don't release the
anyway.
license till it
Right.
comes back from the state with approval. That's correct.
Are all his tips and everything in here? He's all certified?
Yes.
He is signed up for TAM certification. Per your regulation, it'll be submitted at the time the ABCC approves it. He is signed up with tamusa.org. So that has to be in place once the ABCC approves the license. So he will have that. And certainly you can make it's in your regs anyways, but you can make it conditional on that.
You also have a license next door at the restaurant, at the location as well.
I'd just like to say that one of the ideas behind not waiting the 2 weeks is that most of the establishments that come before us, similar to this one, are small businesses. And provided all the documentation is in place, and provided that they're represented by a quality attorney like yourself, that, forcing them to come back and unfortunately pay the lawyer fees for a second visit is not something that necessarily needs to be done. If it were more substantial, then maybe taking a little break in time might be warranted, but for small businesses, I don't think it's necessary.
I agree with that. I mean, I think, plus it's a lot less work for people in the office and whatever, yeah. And the ABC's going to do the work anyway. I mean, they're going to do all of the background check and whatever.
But it's not 2 weeks, it's 4 weeks.
In this case, but I think you're looking to maybe change the policy. Is that what you're
Well, I
looking
think
to?
it's on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
We could have a major restaurant come in, which is, more impactful, and there may be some documentation that's not quite in place, and, but in this case, it seems to be, pretty simple.
If it was a new location that had never had a liquor license, and I want to hear from the neighbors, I mean, from what I understand about this place,
This is a public hearing. I'd be interested to see if there are any neighbors here.
yeah, no, I agree, we should.
Would anyone like to speak on the issue?
I had delicious pepperoni and pizza. He made personally. He has his son and daughter. I don't know who the little girl is behind the counter, but she's very good.
They should come up to the microphone.
Could you just come up and indicate your name and location for us, address?
Just had a knee replacement, so the umbrella doubles as a walker. Yeah.
As long as it's not-
Dave Sneeden, 4 Laredo Drive, Chelmsford, Mass.
and
If you could
I'm
just
on a
repeat
butter,
what you said, because that way people watching at home can hear.
A lot of times from the audience, no one can hear what the dialogue is, only at the mic.
Oh, okay. The dialogue is a liquor license for the pizza place down the street, who's very good. The only objection I would have to his pizzas, he almost gives you too much food to eat. I have to cut back on what he gives. I hope he stays in business with all the food he gives away. But hopefully, he gets a lot of business during the day, and I see a lot of people in there coming. My son goes there, I go there, okay? I got 2 pizzas today. I got the vegetarian.
You've been an expert for 60 years in town.
Yeah. Right? What? You agree? Yeah.
Yeah.
What else do you want me to say?
That's it.
That's great.
That's good.
He is your uncle, or?
Good fella. He makes it himself. So, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
All right, good enough.
All right, so do we have a motion?
Well, you get,
This guy
you
does.
want to see if you got to close the...
Oh, we closed, all right, we'll close the public hearing opportunity.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Any discussion? We make a motion?
All in favor of the closing the
Close the
hearing?
public
Oh,
hearing.
all in favor of closing?
Aye.
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 I'm going to say no. I understand what you're saying about this, having alcohol there before, but for a lot of people, I think this is the first time that, if they're watching this on TV, the first time they're hearing about this restaurant having beer and wine there. So I think I don't see the urgency, and I think we should stick to our policy to hold it open till our next meeting. So I'm voting no.
All right, 4-1.
Okay.
So now do we?
I have a
That was
vote on the
closing the
license.
public hearing.
Motion, the hearing's been closed, now you need a
Right.
motion to act on the
Now,
license.
Now you make the motion.
yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the application for the liquor license for 170 Concord Road, Chelmsford Pizza, Inc.
A second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'll vote yes since we've closed the hearing.
5-0.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
You too. As an aside, how many liquor licenses does the town have, and how many are available? Do you
We
know?
still have a dozen available, so, remember, we
We got-
sought additional licenses with the 129 rezoning, so
Okay.
we're fine. Because again, this was a replacement for one that had been vacated.
Right, yeah.
All right, next we have licenses. We have a one-day all-alcoholic beverage license, American Legion Vinyl Post 313 outdoors at 90 Groton Road. Is there anyone here tonight from that organization?
I don't believe so. The
Today.
Legion, this is an annual
This is like
license
the
for the
8th
Legion.
year, I think.
Yeah.
All right, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the one-day all-alcohol beverages license for the Veterans fundraiser for the American Legion Vinyl Post 313 at 90 Groton Road for August 18, 2018.
A second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
5-0. One-day beer and wine license for Chelmsford Public Library, 25 Boston Road, on 8/24/18. Anyone here from the library tonight?
Hi, my name is Vicki Turcott. I'm the Assistant Director at the library. And on August 24th, we're going to be holding a music trivia evening. And it's an after-hours event. It's a lot of fun. We still have openings if anybody has a trivia team. And we're looking to have a one-day beer and wine license for that evening so that we can sell beer and wine that evening.
Any questions? How many people on a team?
Up to 6.
5 here.
Yeah, we're all tone
A
deaf.
lot of people think we don't know anything, so. All right. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the Chelmsford Library's application for the one-day beer and wine license to be held on August 24, 2018 at the Public Library.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a one-day beer and wine license for the Chelmsford Senior Center. Is anyone here tonight?
Good evening. My name is Darlene Costas. I live at 1 Southwood Drive in Chelmsford. and I am the chairperson for the Friends of the Senior Center, and we are asking for a beer and wine license for September the 20th, commencing at 6 p.m. and ending at 9 p.m.
Anyone have any questions? Do you have a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the Chelmsford Senior Center's application for one-day beer and wine license for August 13th, 2018. Oh, I'm sorry.
September 20th.
September 20th.
A second?
Any discussion?
2018.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We have a one-day beer and wine license for Holiday Inn Express. Is anyone here tonight from Holiday Inn?
Board members, my name is Sid. I'm from the management company which manages the Holiday Inn Express, and it's Katie Blake.
I'm the general manager of the Holiday Inn Express in Chelmsford.
Can I ask a question? Is this, it was in the last meeting, didn't we give one out then too? Or was this
No,
the same
this is
one?
the first for Holiday Inn Express. They've chosen not to have a permanent license, they're coming for a one-day license.
We gave him a CVL last
Give them a
time.
CDL, common victuals license.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe that's what it was.
Yep.
But I mean, does that mean every time, I mean,
Yes.
how
They
many
can
of
do
these are they allowed to get
Up
on
to
a?
30 a year.
30, so they can come in here 30 times?
Yeah.
You'll know your way here.
We don't usually use the license that often. The first license we are requesting is for August 30th because that's our opening ribbon cutting ceremony. It's an afternoon event, 12:30 to 2 p.m. And the other one which we are requesting is for September 4th because it's a vendor appreciation evening for Zoll Medical, who is a big account for all the local hotels here. And they have actually requested us. They're bringing their whole team out there to show the hotel, showcase the hotel.
I think your place looks very nice and everything, you know? I mean, I don't have a problem, it's just that, I don't know, I thought it was easier maybe to apply for a license as opposed to.
Less expensive to do this.
Yeah.
Significantly.
Well, we have a Radisson hotel next door which has a full license, so they host all the big events, which is for this. This is just for opening, and that'll be all.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Do you have a motion?
Paul, do I make a motion for two separate dates or just do it as one?
Yeah.
You can make-
You can do one for the 2 dates.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the one-day beer and wine license for the Holiday Inn Express for both August 30th, 2018 and September 4th, 2018.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
And I don't know, do we want to discuss this last item? There was a review of the carry-in alcohol licensing.
We can take it up after, if you'd like to delay, pass
You can do
over
it.
it for this time. Because we do have an establishment that wishes to
All right.
use BYOB, and they're looking for the board's determination. If my understanding is if you're comfortable requiring that they provide the necessary insurance, then they will come and utilize that. That's the issue at hand, as simple as that.
Really, it's only insurance.
Yep, because the policy's been in effect since 2014.
So can we get it out of the way now, or do we?
Yeah, you can do it if you want to handle it that simply, yes. If you said, you direct it, we require the necessary insurance as recommended by town council, then they'll proceed.
There's a set policy of how much they can bring in
Yes.
per individual. They have to have the proper insurance. Who do they go to make sure all the documentation is in place and the insurance is
They would provide that to our office.
to your
Yeah,
office? All right. And is that information on the website or?
The policy is on the website, which is
Yes.
why they inquired. And now the questions come up on the insurance. And
This would be the
we'll amend
first
policy.
one in town?
Exactly. The policy's been in effect for 4 years.
Yeah, just a little background on that. Matt Hansen and I actually developed this policy. We were a policy subcommittee several years ago, and there was a request. It was a different type of establishment that wanted to have a BYOB capability. So the intent was for that, for somebody that might have a painting event or something like that a couple times a month. It wasn't intended for a CVL, a restaurant, to use it, but as has been pointed out, it doesn't say in it that you can't, so.
So when you developed it at that time, was it actually used?
It was not used, no.
Even though you went through the process, it was never.
That's correct, and we did work with the police chief to be sure that it met all the criteria and, any concerns that they had.
Where's the responsibility, Pat, for, if somebody has too much to drink and stuff like that, under that circumstance?
I believe that's why the insurance is required,
right.
and they do have to have a tip certified person there, even though they're not allowed to pour, they have to, you have to have a tips.
I remember you did it, that's when the painting and all that
That's
stuff was
exactly it,
taken.
yes.
Marcus and Leslie, yeah, that's what it was.
And there are strict rules. I mean, they can't
Yes.
pour it, they can't,
Right.
touch it. It has to come in unopened, has to
Right.
be finished on the premises. They can't leave with an open container. So you have to follow all those rules.
Thank you.
And they're very detailed.
It is pretty strict,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, number 7 is regional.
Take a vote on that?
Sure.
Yeah.
You get it out
I'll
of
make a
the way.
motion to,
Require that the town
Require the
receive
town-
necessary insurances.
yeah,
As
the
recommended by
necessary
council.
documentation showing that the required insurances are in place for the approval of a BYOB license.
A second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
5-0. All right, regional public safety dispatch, we have started this at some meetings in past, and it's going to continue on tonight. We invite anyone from the public who would like to speak about it. An only cautionary note is that if you are just going to rehash information that someone provided at the last meeting, that you let someone else come forward with new information, or you can come forward again, just if you could present new information, just so that everyone gets to speak.
Should we go through this first?
Yeah, I think.
And we have a slide
I can
presentation.
give you a real brief overview on the budgetary aspects. Remember the last time we talked about the policy aspects. This time I'll give a quick overview of the budgetary. Again, we're at the high level, not in the weeds.
Was
but
this developed by your office?
I
or-
developed this, in consultation with the chiefs and the representatives from the Northern Middlesex Council of Government. Right now in Chelmsford, with our budget for the fiscal year that just began, we have salaries for 9 dispatchers. That those base salaries range from $43,000 to $52,000. We also provide longevity, holiday pay, and so forth. So you can see the budget for that is just over $500,000. You then have to provide additional costs such as overtime, uniforms, equipment, training, and the all-important fringe benefits for health insurance, retirement, Medicare. That's another $300,000.
One question, Paul, on the
Yeah.
previous slide.
Mhm.
On the bottom, it says that it includes Medicare tax.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
That's a tax on payroll. We have to pay that on all employees. There's a Medicare tax on payroll that's required in operations. So again, you've got roughly just over $800,000 in operating costs. We do receive 2 state grants. The 911 grant's over $100,000, which again has been in place for years. And then we also have the state training grant for $15,000. So the net cost is roughly $700,000.
And they come directly to the
They come
town.
directly to the town, they're expended. Really, the 911 grant offsets the overtime budget, in essence. In terms of the regional assessment at Northern Middlesex, the proposed assessment for this fiscal year for an operations is $737,000. We would receive a state 911 grant of $288,000, and the state training grant is increased to $36,000, so your net total is $413,000.
Now, just a question on
Sure.
on those 2 grants. Where do they come to the town?
They come to they would go to the center, and then we would get credited to the town as being a member of the center.
Off of the 737?
Exactly. And so if you go to the next slide, you see the comparison of the costs with and without the grant. So even operational, if the same legislation that provides the grant to the town provides the grants to the regional center. So even if that legislation were abolished and the state no longer funded for that, you can see that the operational cost is less for the town in a regional center as opposed to standalone. And then obviously the state grants are greater because they're providing incentives, much like the state does for regional school districts and so forth. And then you also have the capital question, and again, this came from the report, the projected useful life for laptops, servers, and routers, software, the radio console, and furniture for the respective periods, and the calculation was an annual equipment savings of over $150,000. And so the summary, again, is, in a nutshell, there are less operational costs regionally than independently or locally, regardless of the state funding, because I know that was a question about how we assure that the state grant funding would be available. And obviously, they're providing greater incentives for the regional operations. And again, we're in the second administration now that's, the Governor Baker's office has sort of followed this program from the Governor Patrick's administration, and we'll see where we stand in November. So, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do also want to notify the board that in terms of getting input from other officials and communities, we have the town managers here from Tewksbury, Rich Montori, who's a Chelmsford resident, Jim Duggan, the Drake town manager, is here, and we also have the representative here, the executive director of the Devon's Regional Dispatch Center is here also to provide input and information for the board this evening.
Perfect.
In addition to, as you said, you've got residents and dispatchers from our community.
Just one question. The Chelmsford Emergency Communications budget, net total $697. And the next slide is the regional net total to Chelmsford, 413. So there's about 300,000 differential there. In any of these numbers, is the additional workforce that the chief had indicated?
No, that would come out of that. That would come out of that savings.
Out of that 300,000,
Right.
a couple of hundred
Right,
thousand?
and then you put back in the equipment savings. So, yeah, and you saw that the last presentation, so I try not to be duplicative from before, but it was just more of looking side by side in terms of operational costs and state grants.
So the 284, right, is just, that's not the bottom line, there's other.
Right, you're looking at gross
other
numbers.
costs for people that we gotta replace.
Right.
Would you bring that down?
Right there, right.
And then this is year
About
one,
100
where they're
some.
covering the salary for the top person at the rec.
This will be on an ongoing basis, right? What happens with the state grant is they fund the prior year opening for the executive director, and then they fund the first year salary. And what we're trying to do is show a steady state going forward. What are the costs going forward?
This does not.
So it doesn't include
This
that.
includes the salary.
Right.
Would we lose that 911 grant? Is that what?
No, it just comes in a greater form because the state's incentivizing you to participate in a regional center, much like they provide, state provides greater financial resources for regional school districts. They provide greater transportation funding, and they provide, a greater Chapter 70 to induce communities to do regional school districts.
Can you repeat something you said? You said
Sure.
it's a $300,000 savings, but when we $200,000 to staff the lobby.
Right.
But then we lose the savings on what?
You would also then have to net back in the savings on the equipment because the facility we have is going to need to be replaced at some point in time. And so that was, and you've seen that in the earlier presentation. And so again, the incentives are greater from the state.
Really on an ongoing basis, it's more like $250.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, okay.
And I think what you'll hear from the other communities is there were issues that they sought, aside from the driver and Drake and Tewksbury, and they can speak for themselves, wasn't necessarily the financial. They saw it as an enhancement in service, and they can speak to that. As well, you've got the director as well from Devon's, who's also ran the regional facility down in Barnstable County. So he has multiple experiences. I don't know what the board's preference in terms of order. It's your preference.
Do we have the calls per town, Paul?
Sure, that was in the documentation we gave last time, but they're roughly a third between the communities.
We have the most though, right? Chelmsford has
Slightly more.
Yeah, slightly more.
Than Tewksbury.
Yeah.
Now, both chiefs alluded to a fourth town that wishes to remain anonymous. Would that significantly impact those costs if there were a fourth town that joined?
They would. I mean, we've seen those other models back in the original study. The cost, the larger it gets, the costs become more efficient. But the other hand is we just wouldn't take any other town.
Right.
The goal was they didn't want to bring in the city of Lowell, but would they be open to another comparable size community? Yes.
Yeah.
But at this point in time, we have no indication you may have seen recent news reports regarding another incident in Barica on their dispatch, but we've had no indication that Barica is moving forward to join the regional facility.
Matter of fact, I got a call from,
Yeah, they're not.
and they want no part, they
Right,
said they want no part of it.
right.
A question, the state is willing to give the town more money if we regionalize. So I assume they're willing to give any community that was a part of this original group more money. So if they're giving every town more money, where's the savings for the state for doing this? I don't quite
Because you'll
get
have
it.
fewer facilities that they'll have to support. So right now, the technology changes. They're going out to hundreds of individual dispatch centers with new technology and so forth. You go to a regional facility, your operational investments are significantly reduced because you're providing more efficiencies in terms of their investments. And, you know, and so, again, maybe we can hear from what's happened in the Cape and so forth. So, you know,
You're up. Whoever wants to go first. You're in the front of the line.
Talking about someone from the Cape, I apologize. Before I get started, first of all, my name's Frank Good, lifelong resident of Chelmsford, been on the police department for 25 years, the last 11 years as a sergeant. Am I allowed to ask a question before I get started? I'm going to tell you, that presentation didn't make a lot of sense. I'm guessing people at home are questioning too, what is the number? That's not telling us the number. You talked about the extra cost for the police officers to man the window. Is there a chance we could have a PowerPoint that shows this is the number?
I think we had that last time, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So if
No.
maybe you didn't see the previous presentation.
No, I
to
did.
Last meeting.
I did. Could we have the number? If you had it last week, I'm guessing you do have it now.
It's roughly $200,000, Frank.
That includes manning 4 officers?
Yes. Yes.
I'm sure there'll be others here who will beg to differ and probably would be able to present information to the contrary. But as I begin, good evening. Thank you for, Mr. Chairman, Board of Selectmen, the opportunity to speak at your meeting. As I said, my name's Frank Good. I've been a sergeant with the police department for over 25 years. Excuse me. I've been on the police department for over 25 years, 11 years as a sergeant. I'm also currently the president of the Superior Officers Union. I'm here tonight to speak in opposition of regionalization of dispatch as both a tax-paying resident and a supervisor of the Chelmsford Police Department. I would like to make clear to the board and to the public that neither I nor the Superior Officers Union have a financial interest in whether dispatch is regionalized or not. My interest rests solely on how regionalization would negatively affect the operations of the police department and the public safety in general. As a sergeant working in the patrol division, our assignment is either patrol supervisor on the road or assigned to inside operations as shift commander, officer in charge. These duties are dependent upon staffing levels on any given shift. 3 years ago, the town of Chelmsford was at a crossroads. Do we regionalize, or do we make a capital investment into the communication center at the police department? The board heard from all sides, listened to the public, did their homework, and decisively voted 4-1 not to regionalize dispatch. Over $500,000 was approved at town meeting, and the capital improvements were made. Everyone agrees that our dispatch system is not broken, and it runs exceptionally well. So to revisit this again is frustrating. Regionalization was a bad idea 3 years ago, and is still a bad idea today. I would like to correct and clarify some misinformation and false narratives that have been spread. We've been told repeatedly that our dispatchers, if regionalized, will be dispatchers dedicated to Chelmsford. This is simply false. Our dispatchers may be offered regionalized jobs, but from what I'm hearing, many are not interested. For those who do take the job, the expectation will be that they will be responsible for dispatch duties for all 3 towns, not just specifically Chelmsford. Our dispatchers would be replaced with dispatchers that do not know our town, our officers, our policies and procedures and rules and regulations. More importantly, the concerns of the community and its stakeholders. We would have dispatchers who potentially have never stepped foot in Chelmsford or have a vested interest in this town. The institutional knowledge of our department and the town that our dispatchers possess is immeasurable. Our dispatchers are trained in-house and learn how the police department operates. This information is passed on from dispatcher to dispatcher through years of experience. To subject this department to the revolving door of regional dispatchers is a threat to officer safety and public safety. Mr. Posniak was clear when asked about retention of dispatchers at regional centers. He admitted they are addressing this problem by trying to implement programs through local high schools. This issue is not an anomaly to Massachusetts regional centers, but rather a nationwide trend that regional centers around the country are having. Make no mistake about it. The 18-year-old kid who just graduated high school with no life or work experience is not fit to dispatch for a police agency. Currently, the town of Chelmsford has 9 dedicated dispatchers, and we have no retention issues. Another misconception is that this is only about 911 call taking. Last year, the police department had over 32,000 calls for service that required dispatching of a cruiser or a police officer. Only 6,300 of them were the result of a 911 call. Our dispatchers handle every radio transmission with those officers, from every self-initiated motor vehicle stop to all police actions and activities that require dispatch communication. 911 calls are only one facet of their job and their responsibility to the town. These dispatchers are one of us. They are our lifeline on the radio. They are our support staff for every officer that works in the police department. I'll give you a little example. If an officer is on a foot pursuit and he's giving out landmarks over the radio instead of proper street addresses and whatnot, our dispatchers know the town. They know where we are. They know how to get us help. Again, institutional knowledge. Someone who's unfamiliar with Chelmsford may not know where we are or what we're talking about. There is a reason why departments our size do not regionalize. It does not work for them. We're not Western Mass, a small town on the Cape, or some township in Pennsylvania. Towns smaller than us, like Townsend and Amesbury, cannot get out of regionalization fast enough. Why would you ever give up local control to a state agency? The governance agreement for this regional dispatch does not ensure local control. It only guarantees a seat at the table. As it would stand now, 33% of decisions would be able to be made without the Chelmsford opinion. Every town is different. Every police department is different. It has different policies and procedures and priorities. Why would you settle for a seat at the table? When you have local control, you are the table. You own the table. Local control is our chiefs, our elected and appointed officials deciding how things will operate, not some state bureaucrat in some board where you have a third of the decision-making authority. Our dispatch center is the operations center of our department. Chief Spinney described last meeting. The OIC office is attached to the communication center. Our police station was designed and built that way for a reason. So the officer in charge has complete control and supervision over the operations of the police department. Dispatch is where vital information flows through. As the chief discussed, we have the ability as supervisors to be involved in decision-making events in real time as they are unfolding, and not after only hearing a radio transmission from Tewksbury. If regionalized, we'd have to pick up a phone, call Tewksbury to ascertain more information about the call. This is not ideal because when a serious event is taking place, dispatchers are already busy answering phones and dispatching appropriate resources. Answering another phone call from us is counterproductive. They're busy. When the town experiences a critical incident and the elements of this event are unfolding in real time, any superior officer up to and including the chief may be in the police station. They have the ability to walk into our communication center and have their finger on the pulse of the incident. For those of you in town that have experienced a power outage for an extended period of time, like many of us have experienced over the past 10 years with some of these unprecedented ice and snowstorms, this can be an interruption in your everyday life. What the general public doesn't see, and what members of the board can't possibly fathom, is that during these incidents, the communication center is the brain of rectifying any incident. It is the hub in which information flows in and out of. Information and communication of this information is the foundation of public safety. The information is from phone calls, person-to-person interaction, past experiences, and on-scene judgment calls that cannot be replaced. Last week, during a telephone interview on WCAP, the town manager stated that dispatchers would be professionally supervised at a regional dispatch center, and currently, they are supervised by just police officers. Needless to say, many of us were taken back by this statement. I assure you, Mr. Town Manager, Board of Selectmen, and the public, every lieutenant and every sergeant that directly supervises our dispatchers are professionals and supervise in a professional manner. Again, remember, dispatch is not broken and it runs exceptionally well. To the point of supervision, the police department has a clearly defined chain of command. If a supervisor is not happy with how a call is handled or dispatched, we address it in real time with them. This process will cease to exist in a regionalized setting, as we will no longer be able to directly address any dispatch shortcomings. During this phone interview, it was also stated that dispatchers would have the opportunity for career advancement in a regional setting. I have yet to hear from a single dispatcher that is eager to regionalize because they have the opportunity to become a regional dispatch supervisor in Tewksbury. Ironically, the career advancement of our former dispatchers is well documented. Currently, former Chelmsford dispatchers hold these positions: Chelmsford Police Lieutenant, Chelmsford Police Sergeant, 2 Chelmsford firefighters, a Lowell Fire Captain, a Lowell Police Officer, a full-time Carlisle dispatcher who works as a reserve police officer in that town. We are also fortunate enough to have 3 of our current dispatchers who are members of our volunteer Chelmsford Police Auxiliary Police Unit. 2 of these dispatchers are also CPR and first responder EMT instructors, and several others maintain EMT certifications. It was also stated that those who oppose this are afraid of change. To say this is just dismissing someone's professional opinion because their opinion does not fit your narrative or position. Make no mistake about it, we are not afraid of change. We are afraid of the consequences of changing something that isn't broken and hoping that it all works out. Our concerns are valid, indisputable, and should not be dismissed. Since the tragic events of Columbine High School in 1999, through the most recent events in Parkland, Florida this year, the law enforcement community nationwide has continued to strive to correct the mistakes of the past through training. The Chelmsford Police Department has embraced this and has been a leader in this area. In cooperation with the school department, the town of Chelmsford and the police department have facilitated the installation of cameras within our schools, and these feeds go directly to our communication center. This past April, the police department, in partnership with the fire department, Trinity Ambulance, and the paramedics from Lowell General EMS, conducted joint training exercises in active shooter threat training in conjunction with rescue task force training. This training incorporated our dispatchers. Our dispatchers utilized a training frequency from a command van, dispatched the scenarios, and controlled all communications as if it was an actual event. That is how important this training is. They trained side by side with us. If there was ever a school event like this, our dispatchers have been trained and are ready. These dispatchers will be the ones answering the 911 calls from your kids, my kids, our kids, and from the faculty within the school. They will have the ability to look at video feeds and potentially direct those to where it's safe, while directing the first responding officer directly to the threat to take them out. Our dispatchers have the knowledge and the training. They have the video feeds and they know the schools. Other than neutralizing an active threat, it is known that the second most important part of these events is clear communications to facilitate resources while making clear lines of communications, while maintaining clear lines of communications between agencies. There are some reports out there that have indicated that the failures by the Regional Dispatch Center in Broward County, Florida, contributed to the many failures of the Parkland, Florida response. Over the last 3 years and up to today, no one has given an ounce of information or reasoning that would suggest that regional dispatch would benefit the Chelmsford Police Department and how it operates. I have heard there may be a cost savings, and that's the benefit. How much is the savings? But at what expense? Officer safety? Public safety? I'm sure there are people here with those numbers, and we'll share them with you. I don't stand here pretending to know the numbers to make my point. So please don't pretend to know how police departments operate to make yours. Let's not forget the last time the town tried to save about $60,000. The school department decided to privatize custodians. That turned out to be a disaster. These employees stole from our kids, the faculty, and the school property itself. Proper cleaning was not done, cost savings were never realized, and the school department has been forced to revisit these services and make necessary changes. In closing, please remember this. These are Chelmsford Police Department dispatchers. They're Chelmsford Fire Department dispatchers. They are dispatchers for every resident in the town. They are your dispatchers. They are our dispatchers. Let's keep it that way. Keep them here in Chelmsford where they belong.
Questions? Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Hi, Kate Kuchar, 4 Clover Hill Drive. I just wanted to come up and let you know I am not in favor of regionalizing at all. Yes, my husband is a police officer, not in town, in another town. It is a smaller town. They are regionalized. It is not good. And being the wife of a police officer, I want to know that if God forbid something happens, that I am going to get notified and that somebody is going to be able to help my husband and back him up. And, you know, the frustrating part is, I mean, everybody has seen that I lived across the street from, I had some lovely neighbors this past year, and there was a shooting, and it went on for 2 years where there were incidents. And being able to pick up the phone and call 911 and have dispatch immediately know what was going to happen, and they could send somebody, that's not, we should not be looking to save money. These are people's lives. This is my life. This is my children's life. I mean, really, we have an amazing dispatch center. And I can tell you, they are phenomenal. And being able to reach out to them, I mean, it really isn't worth the savings of money, truly. So I really hope that we look further into this and that we vote no. It's not a good thing. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Good evening. My name is Denise Pelletier. I live on Brickham Road in Chelmsford. In 2011, when regional dispatch was first brought forward, there were 9 communities involved in the meetings. Now in 2018, there's only 2 communities involved, which are Dracut and Tewksbury. Many communities involved voiced the same issues, that they didn't see the cost savings. Many departments would have to hire additional personnel to cover other functions that dispatchers do. Some communities were informed they would have to pay more of the cost due to the size of their city or town, and they didn't think the savings were worth the risk. Many communities stated that their dispatchers know the city or town the best, including landmarks, streets with the same name or similar names, that dispatchers from other towns would be less familiar with, and with emergency calls, seconds count. Chelmsford dispatchers know their residents. They know the problem addresses. Keeping the dispatch center in town is essential to the services the dispatchers now provide for our residents. Chief Spinney stated he wanted 2 Chelmsford dispatchers assigned to Chelmsford at all time, but they may not happen. Even the gentleman from the state stated they're not guaranteed a job. Some will get hired and some won't. Chelmsford has dedicated knowledgeable, and professional dispatchers in the town now. Many of them have invested years into the job, 15, 20, 25 years, yet they may not get hired at the new center. And who's going to maintain the records such as stolen motor vehicle reports, missing person reports, and warrants? This paperwork needs to be available to the officers 24/7. So will they need to drive to Tewksbury to drop off the paperwork? Or will it be maintained here in town? If so, do you need to hire additional personnel to maintain those records, to make sure they're available to the officers? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chris Bowman, 3 Julio Street, Precinct 4 Representative. I'd only like to make a couple points at this point in time. I'd like to remind the board of a few things. First, this comes on the heels of town government attempting to shut down the fire station in South Chelmsford. Fire response is not just about putting out fires or preventing fires. They provide EMTs and first responders. Every second counts to save a life. This regionalization will compromise protection and safety in town. In addition to that, the town government has already authorized a multitude of apartment buildings and hundreds of units, and has hundreds of units planned for this town. We're going to have an influx of thousands of people. This is not the time to compromise protection and safety, and in fact, it's never a good time to compromise protection and safety. It is priceless. Protection and safety trump money every single time. When there's a problem, you can't pay enough money to solve it or to have it resolved quickly. So another thing I would like to bring up is that the town budget is presently at $133 million. Now, the presumed cost savings is $200,000, which I don't believe when all the monies are ferreted out that would be the case. We'd be actually paying more money for this regionalization. However, with $133 million in a budget, there's plenty of opportunity to eliminate non-essential activities. Protection and safety is inherently essential, period. You don't mess with protection and safety. So last year, I believe it was at the Springtown meeting, the residents of this town were overtaxed by $800,000. A statement was made by the town manager, who stated that this amount was too small of a sum to return to the residents, and it wasn't. So in fact, $800,000 that belonged to the residents were not returned because it was too negligible. A presumed cost savings of $200,000 is less than negligible. It is irrelevant. You don't base your compromising protection and safety on irrelevancy. This is pure nonsense. So please consider these situations carefully, consider the consequences, and please vote this down. Thank you very much.
Good evening again, Hank Hool, Precinct 4. I wasn't expected to talk tonight, but I just want to give you some insight on my career as a firefighter and line captain, shift commander. When I first became captain, you're kind of like over your head because you got 15 guys, their lives depend on you. You get multiple calls, and you kind of don't know exactly what you're doing, 100%. The dispatchers know who the new firefighter, new captains are, and when I first became a captain, one instant I had like 4 calls at once, and the dispatcher would go, they would do my job for me. You want the rescue over here, right? You want this, and they helped me out a lot to mitigate more than one incident. That's one reason I'm against this regionalization. Number two is we all go out party together, we all know each other. So we all know how this town works and the best way. We talk about the job, how to improve it and stuff, believe it or not. Number two. And my last one I want to point out is the only time and it happens every week, when I have misinformation, it's always through 911, state police. Go on a highway for a rollover, you're out there for 10 minutes looking, and it's in Westford or it's in Tingsboro. Every time it's regionalized, a call, the information isn't 100%. So, like last week, I think it was, or this week, last week, it was a rollover in Westford. We had 3 trucks rolling for 10 minutes on the highways, wasting our time and fuel and everything else. So those are the little things that I can point out that you shouldn't take this away. I know it's $200,000 or whatever, but you really should keep it. And if you want to revisit it after the ambulance study and everything, fine. But I'd keep everything the way it is till we get the stations, committee sign, figure that out, station location, ambulance. Now you have a basis of, all right, let's do a regionalization if it works now. Because if you're going to take over the ambulance, you don't even know if you're going to do that or not yet. Why regionalize it? It's just too early for that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You want to hear from some of the...
I think this is the last one.
You got two managers or something.
Yep.
Wanted to sort of piggyback on a comment that Chris Bowman made. My name's Richard Stader. I live on 153 Turnpike Road. She stated that seconds count in an emergency, and she couldn't be more correct. I'm just an ordinary person. I've personally saved 3 lives so far, and the seconds counted. Seconds desperately counted. And one was a person that had a heart attack on the Mass Pike. Everybody was driving by. I was the only one that made the observation and got help. And that person lived through the incident. It was med-flighted to Boston, and they survived. But it was seconds that mattered. And another incident was on the Concord River. A boat turned over, and it was an elderly person with his son. They got put into the water on April 15th when there was still 10 or 12 inches of snow on a snowbank. All right, it was very cold. There were 6 other boats in the area fishing. They all took off. It was my brother and I that rendered assistance. We saved these people's lives. But the youngest one was in the water the longest, and he was a thinner person, not a lot of body mass. And after that was all over, and he had a chance to warm up and recover, he looked us in the face and said, I could not have lasted another few seconds in that water. I was wasting away. I knew I was going to be unconscious very, very soon. So the idea of having somebody far away at a distribution center trying to act in these emergencies, I think really puts people's lives at risk. And, there's drownings, other issues where seconds literally matter between life and death. So I feel that our Chelmsford fire and police departments are very good, a cut above. And I don't feel that we should compromise our communications and have them be able to work as a tight team to help this town into the future. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have someone from the other towns involved?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Richard Montori. I'm the town manager in Tewksbury. As Paul mentioned, I'm a resident, but I'm not here as a resident tonight. I'm here as the town manager in Tewksbury. First, I want to mention that I am not here, and I think I speak for Jim Duggan, the town manager at Drake, to convince you to join the center. I'm not here to push this down any town's throat, as was mentioned to me as I walked in. We're here to answer any questions you might have on why we decided to join. I want to point out a couple of the reasons why we decided to join. We went through all of the same issues that were mentioned tonight. We had all of the same concerns that were mentioned tonight. And at the end of the day, the fire chief and the police chief and myself, but especially the fire chief and police chief, felt comfortable that joining a regional center was not going to reduce public safety one bit. That in fact, they felt, and I feel, that joining a regional center will increase the quality of communication services to our residents, because we'll be part of a state-of-the-art facility with the most up-to-date equipment and trained dispatchers that are have enhanced training more than we currently have for our dispatchers. I also want to state that our dispatchers in Tewksbury, and I know in Dracut, and I know in Chelmsford, are excellent. There's no doubt about that. No one's questioning that. No one's questioning our police capabilities, our fire capabilities. But there's always opportunities to improve and make things better. And we feel that regionalizing will do that. We feel that in a large event, we'll have more dispatchers to handle a crisis or a situation than we currently have. We believe that having more dispatchers available will reduce the stress and the strain on dispatchers when they have to cover overtime. Yes, there is a cost savings. There's a cost savings to Tewksbury and there's a cost savings to Dracut. Is that important? Yes, it's a factor, but it's not the driving force. We believe we're going to be able to create an environment for dispatchers to increase and build upon the professionalism that they have. And it will, in fact, have opportunities for growth, whether they want to do it or not. There will be supervisors on every shift, and there'll be an executive director for the center itself, so there will be growth opportunities for them. We also feel that every town will be served properly. There will be enough dispatchers at the center to, similar to what Tewksbury has now on every shift, similar to what Dracut has. In the plan, if Chelmsford came on board, there would be the same number of dispatchers handling the calls. We would not reduce manning of dispatch at all. I think the chief knows that, and I think anybody who's read the information knows that. So from our standpoint, there was a cost savings, that was important, but most of all, we felt that we were going to be able to provide an enhanced service to our residents and not reduce public safety whatsoever. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions? I have one. When your town joined the region, originally it was before my time on the board, but there were originally, I believe, 9 towns that were proposed.
Correct.
When Tewksbury joined, how many of the 9 towns were still undecided?
Well, when I first started, and this goes back probably 10 years ago, if not more, it got down to serious discussions between Tewksbury, Chelmsford, Dracut, and Lowell at the time. Westford and Billerica decided to make improvements or go their own way. The other communities that were mentioned earlier that opted out for reasons actually joined smaller regional centers throughout the state. They didn't just not want to do it. There were ones closer to their homes. Lowell was very interested in joining, but Lowell wanted to have a greater majority of say on the executive committee, and we as the towns did not want to allow that. We wanted everyone to have equal say. So once they found that out, they decided not to join. So then it came down to the 3 communities, and as was mentioned earlier, Chelmsford voted not to join. But it's important to note, because I know it was stated earlier, this is not a state-run facility. This is a town-run facility with the communities involved. The town managers are the executive committee that will make the ultimate decisions, but the public safety chiefs will make all operating decisions. Every town will have an equal vote. There's not a weighted vote in this situation. The state is not going to come in and tell us what to do. We will do it as a regional group, each having an equal say. And just one last thing, there are 13 regional emergency communication centers in the Commonwealth serving 80 communities. So we're not the first, we're not the only. There are others that have already been in place before us, and I believe there are 44 others ready to go.
Thank you for coming out tonight. We appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Selectmen, my name is James Duggan. I am the town manager in Dracut. No one here in any of the communities across the country, across the world, want anything to happen, to our public safety officials. We want the best response with emergency response. When you pick up that phone and you dial 911, you are in the most vulnerable position you could possibly be in. and you are relying on individuals which you don't know on the other end to be able to dispatch those individuals to you correctly, efficiently, and to expedite that. I have witnessed in a number of different regional dispatch centers, all the way from the one that's local over in Devons, that operation, all the way to down in Pennsylvania. That one of the areas, predominantly in Pennsylvania, very large tracts of open area, but they do have Scranton, Pennsylvania. We have family in Scranton, Pennsylvania. They are regionalized. They also we're dealing with the same situations. People that are familiar with the community, people know different areas of the community and their nicknames, that dispatchers know that, if you're gonna go send it to the road, it's not Clark Road, but people always refer to it as the road. Dispatchers know that. Well, there is clear technology that is there that allows that, those trick words, those trick slang words to be where it needs to be dispatched. You also have to understand, what I also had heard after the fact, Danvers had a major explosion in the community approximately 7 years ago, maybe a little longer. And I heard from the taped recordings firsthand, the local dispatch in the Danvers Police Department broke down. It was overwhelmed. And there was strong sentiment that through a regional dispatch, we all don't, and we all can't predict when we're going to have a disaster, but we all know what happens. There was strong sentiment that if the regional dispatch was in place, there would have been enough manpower there to be able to handle the onslaught of calls and emergency requirements to be dispatched to those to that area. And I firmly believe we had the Board of Selectmen in Drake unanimously voted. Our chiefs support it. Just what Mr. Montori said, it's not about necessarily the cost savings. I've been the town manager in Drake for a little over 4 years. When the idea of having the discussion again came up about the regional dispatch, I didn't care about the cost savings. As Richard had said, I was looking for, through the support, and the Board of Selectmen supported me, was to have an opportunity, a professional, trained opportunity, professional positions that will bring state-of-the-art technology for the residents and the businesses of our community. We all want that, without a doubt. I've also witnessed firsthand that in the other communities I've also managed, not every dispatcher is from that community. If that's the case here in Chelmsford, congratulations. But I can tell you firsthand that there is a training mechanism that is in place in communities so people do become familiar. Just as there is here in Chelmsford. I'm sure there's a training capacity, for that transition. And there would be with other, within the regional dispatch. So I'd like to say we strongly feel, Drake and Tewksbury strongly feel the model works. Clearly, there's enough regional dispatch centers out there that there's strong support, and they're solid operations we all want the benefit and the safety for our people. But thank you.
Thank you for participating.
Perhaps you could hear from Ross Clune, who actually runs the regional dispatch center. Ross, can you go up?
Good evening, Ross Clun. I'm the Executive Director at Neshoba Valley Regional Dispatch District, that's out of Devons. What questions do you have for me?
Where were you prior to Devons?
So before working at Devons at Neshoba, I was down on the Cape with Barnstable County Sheriffs. Down there we dispatched regionally 911. We dispatched for 10 fire departments, about 30,000 runs a year. Population served was in the winter maybe 80,000 and probably between 150 and 180,000 in the summer. So not small towns like you might think. Population served at Neshoba Valley is 7 communities, 6 municipalities in Devons itself, and about 44,000.
You've heard the concerns of the speakers tonight. How would you address those in terms of, there's a lot of fear that quality will not be consistent, quality will go down. How have you found it in your experience?
I think that the focus on quality and the control over that is really a local issue. If a community wants this to succeed and they want to be part of a regional center, they themselves are responsible for that. If there's a desire, a willingness, a commitment to it, it will succeed, it will flourish, it will work. If people want to sabotage it, they don't want to be part of it, they will make the argument and it will fail. So I think that's something that we see in other areas of the Commonwealth with other regional centers. The ones that operate, they operate well because of a commitment and an ongoing commitment of the local communities to support it. And that starts with the public safety agencies, the dispatchers, and boards and elected officials. I think that a concern that there's a loss of control is not, I don't believe that it's a valid concern myself from what I've seen, both being on the Cape and in Neshoba. The governance is defined by the signing members. So that's typically your elected officials or your town managers or town administrators in this case that have ultimate oversight of the dispatch center. And then, at least speaking on behalf of Neshoba right now, our operations committee are all public safety chiefs, police and fire. So there is no state intervention. There are no state officials that oversee what we do at all.
So the executive committee is the chiefs from all the member towns?
Yeah, so you have choices when you sign on and create a dispatch district. Your choices for governance, again, is what makes sense for your local communities. In my particular case at Neshoba right now, we have an administrative board, which is all of the town managers or town administrators for the 7 communities. And then there is an operations committee, which is made up of police and fire chiefs. You can define how many voting members you want. You can define the ratio, the quorum that's necessary. All those things are configurable per agreement. So those are obviously the signing members. That's all up to local control. There's no state say in how that part of it happens.
How would you characterize turnover, low, medium, or high?
Turnover for any dispatch center is a challenge. If you just read the article in the Wall Street Journal that came out a couple days ago, it's a national problem. One could argue that a regional dispatch center with the right incentives actually would have a better opportunity of attracting and retaining qualified professional dispatchers. I think historically, what we've seen in the dispatch profession is that it wasn't a profession, it was a stepping stone. And so when we hear folks talk about promotional opportunities, what they're really talking about is promotion off the desk. They're talking about coming in as a dispatcher and working until they get a job as a firefighter or a police officer later on. I think what we're trying to encourage with the regional dispatch center and as a whole with the profession is enticing and attracting and retaining folks to stay in the profession for their career and not leave after 3 or 4 or 5 years. You know, the point is that we want people to be satisfied and proficient doing the job as a dispatcher and not see it as a stepping stone, which was in the past the case.
Do you have an idea of how long it takes to cross-train when you form a new regional center? Because that's a huge concern for our
it should be. It should be. I don't know that I could answer the question. I don't specifically know your communities. Part of this is it can be as easy or as difficult as you want to make it. The complexity of your dispatch, the systems that you operate on, it's really hard to put a number on that. Yeah. I would add that, and I heard this mentioned a couple of times, the concerns about seconds are lost, and one of the town administrators just made it, I think, the point very well. But I just want to reiterate this, is that one thing that's fairly obvious with a regional dispatch center is that you will have more folks on duty than you would in any single community or single agency, particularly if you split police and fire separately. And so your ability to handle large incidents like an active shooter or an explosion at a factory will be better served by a center that simply has more people on duty. Now, whether you want to say that you achieve more people on duty by having a regional center, or you want to achieve more dispatchers on duty in your own city or town by simply hiring more and overstaffing, well, that's your own business. But to make that happen, most people are choosing now to go as part of a regional dispatch center so that on a day-to-day basis, they simply have more people on duty and can absorb that influx that you can't necessarily anticipate. So that is a big benefit of a regional dispatch center.
Let me ask you one last question. There are many businesses. Think of a bank, and a bank has many branches. And typically, the bank moves their managers around from community to community after a certain period of time. Part of that, I think, is that they want them to be more worldly and be able to do their job better, and also at the same time have a better understanding of different towns or different communities have different problems and to be more well-rounded. Has it been your experience that if you have dispatches from a particular town, that the overall product, dispatching product that you offer to the public, and when I say the public, all the towns that you serve, is it better that those people are working at different towns at different times, that they don't stay with one town, that they are purposely assigned to different towns so that they become a better overall product, or that they stay with their one community?
Right, in the way that you might cross-train someone if they just do fire or police and cross-train them to do both, so you would cross-train people so that they're familiar with more than one community. Is that what you're suggesting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's what matters to your organization if you choose to do this or not, however it's set up. I've seen it both ways, and I think that there is some validity to having folks work a position so that they're kind of outside their comfort zone. I think we need to keep in mind that when incidents happen, there's questions about, we know the common places and the landmarks that only locals will know. Again, having more staff on duty just by virtue of being a larger center, you have a much larger pool of knowledge to draw from, and it's very typical, and certainly something you'd want to have happen is having supervisors who are dispatch supervisors. And let's be clear about this. As a profession, I consider a dispatch supervisor is someone who does that job, not as someone that works for another discipline and comes in and tells you what to do. So first and foremost, dispatch supervisors who work their way up. But again, that pool of knowledge, that pool of information, that institutional knowledge, instead of having 1 or 2 people on duty, now you have 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 people on duty. So the chances are between a room with 2 people in it, if they're going to know where every landmark is in town, and 6 people, I place my bet with the 6 people on duty. I also want to mention that one thing with the regional center, just from my personal experience being at Neshoba, and also something that we saw in Barnstable County, is I would not do this if the only goal was to save money. It is possible to save money, and certainly economy of scale here plays a role, but it's the improvement in services, the increase in staffing, the improvement in training because of the funding that's available. So state funding is geared towards population served, and when you hit certain benchmarks like 50,000 and 100,000, you are eligible for more training money than you would get if you were less than 50,000. So, that's something to consider. Again, personal experience, Neshoba's been open for 5 years, and we're probably looking at about $2 million in grant funding that we received, which has gone towards capital expenditures. So communities that wouldn't have had in the past computers in the ambulances, in the fire trucks, and the police cruisers, they have computers now. Improvements to radio systems, improvements to IT infrastructure. We have an excellent IT infrastructure at our dispatch center, which is something that no individual community could ever have afforded reasonably. The CAD system that we have, computer mapping, there are all sorts of capital expenses here that the communities have not had to pay a dime towards because the state is incentivizing the development, the promoting regional dispatch centers, and so that's one of the benefits. By regionalizing, you now open up that funding stream, which you wouldn't have as an individual municipality. So that's been a big advantage if you would ask any of our member communities, not just the cost savings, but all of the other things that go with it.
Have you been in your region since the beginning?
No, I've been there just about a year now. We've been open 5 years, and then prior to that with Barnstable County for about 21 years.
When they opened your most recent group, Do you know how many towns were in it when you opened?
4 when we opened, and since then, 2 more, and then 1. So we're at 7 right now.
And when did it start?
5 years ago, 2013.
So about one a year.
Was 4, and then for a little while, nothing, and then about 2 years ago, 2 communities, and then about 18 months ago, 1 more.
Okay.
And when they joined, they got equal seat at the table?
Yeah, so there's different funding models, you know, just like there's differences in governance. If you look around the Commonwealth, you're going to see slight variations in how they make up their boards and what kind of votes people have. Right now, we are under what I would call equal pay, equal say. So the operating expenses are divided 7 ways after we subtract grant funding from the state. And so each community is assessed the same amount. There are different funding models. You can do it based on call volume, you can do it based on population. Again, it's whatever makes sense to the communities when they form the agreement. There are pros and cons to both. So one could argue if you pay more that you have more votes at the table, but from a perspective of a district, we could argue that that could be counterproductive to the operation as a whole, because big communities feel that they get more say, but maybe that works for you. Again, there is quite a bit of element of local say in how it's organized. So again, the feeling that there's a loss of control, I don't think is completely valid. It all depends on what kind of model you're looking at, what kind of agreement you sign up for.
And that model doesn't get altered. It gets set up at inception, and then these next 3 towns that you've added have had to agree to that written document.
We're actually looking at revising it, though. I think even after 5 years, and you'll see other places in the Commonwealth, you know, as their needs change, that we're even looking to alter our agreement as well, as far as how our governance is set up. Yeah, so it's not a completely static thing. I wouldn't say it's entirely a living document, but it can be changed. We're looking at changing ours now, and it has changed in the last 5 years once or twice.
I think that setting it in stone would be irresponsible.
No, I agree.
I think it's the sort of thing that you have to tweak as you go along. So I think that, you know, there would have to be flexibility written into it.
Agreed.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Colleen Carragher. I am at 105 Lock Road, and I realize that except for the gentleman who just spoke, nobody else has probably dealt with regional 911. I spent the last 15 years in Syracuse, New York, and I lived in, this is going to be confusing, the town of Baldwinsville. It's actually the town of Lysander, the village of Baldwinsville, and Van Buren. In 2012, there was a fire. They called 911. The gentleman was probably losing conscious and could not breathe. He said, "Help, I cannot breathe." There was a 4-minute and 54 delay in dispatching the correct personnel. They should have dispatched the firefighters. The man died, and 2 police officers were hurt. I do not believe having a dispatch center 20 miles away from where we lived is the right answer. You want somebody who's going to be in your town who knows what fire station to dispatch, what road. They could have got a village police officer to that address in minutes. So I ask you to consider that it's not the best choice for Chelmsford. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Angela Dulac, and I'm at 7 Lynch Way in North Chelmsford. I run the Chelmsford Pop Warner, and as I sit here and listen to all of you, it's so concerning to me that we are even thinking about this. It's not about the money, sir. It's about the health and welfare of our kids. And $200,000 is chump change. When you think about what could happen, we had a medical incident last week. A young lady fainted. I called, I said, "I'm at Parker, I need help." I didn't have to give them an address, I didn't have to say anything else. Somebody's on their way. You represent us, and we live in the town of Chelmsford. All due respect to Drake, Tewksbury, and every other town, but you have a responsibility to me, my fellow citizens, my children, to seek out what's best for Chelmsford. And doing this is not in the best interest of our kids, of our parents, and of our future. I want to call 911 and know somebody's going to know exactly where I am and where to send help to. So think about that before you vote. You represent me. I am your taxpayer in your town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Chris Bowman, 3 Julio Street, Precinct 4 Representative. And I would just like to interject that the gentleman who spoke earlier, Mr. Clune, kept on saying that a regional communication center would be a great thing if there ever was a large situation that had to be addressed. Well, one thing that is overlooked is the Massachusetts Civil Defense Agency. They're located in Framingham. They have a bunker. They have a huge communication center, and they would be the ones to handle any large situation. So regionalization is not required. There was another comment the gentleman made. One second, please. There was a comment that dispatcher supervisors are better than law enforcement supervision. Well, it must be remembered that dispatching was the job of police officers from the beginning. Dispatchers were civilian dispatchers were set up in order to take the call, talk on the phone, feed that information to law enforcement. Law enforcement and fire are the ones that provide protection and safety. They not only do that, they also ensure that the laws are conducted properly. So to say that dispatcher supervisors are better than law enforcement is a false statement. Dispatching is law enforcement. That's why it needs to stay connected to law enforcement. Separating that off to civilian, and I'm sorry, the state is going to operate these facilities. They're providing the money, and therefore directives coming from a political entity does not serve us at all. Thank you very much.
Well, thank everyone for coming tonight and adding to the public input. I think we will close the public input on the topic for now. We are going to continue, just as a note, we're going to continue the dialogue for our next meeting, and we will vote at our next meeting on the issue. You know, I can say from my experience in hearing from the members of the board that a lot of people have received a lot of phone calls about the matter. I know that the members of the board who have not witnessed the dispatch center directly have gone down there. Others know the facility well. And we are trying to really gather as much information to make the right decision for the town. We appreciate the input from executives from other towns. We know that you attend a lot of meetings at night, and we appreciate you coming over to Chelmsford and aiding us in our decision. And anyone else have anything to say tonight? Again, we look forward to seeing some of you at our next meeting, and thank you. Yes? One last comment?
Dave Sneeden, 4 Laredo Drive, Chelmsford. Yeah, I heard a lot of good comments about this and so forth, and I learned a lot tonight. What I haven't heard too much about is the logistics of it. Lowell sits right in the middle of Dracut and Tewksbury, and they dropped out. Chief Spinney could probably back me up on this. If we got overloaded here in Chelmsford, we have Westford as a backup. We abut Westford and we abut Billerica. So I don't understand you know, how this whole operation would work to begin with. As an example, I wonder if anybody in any of the dispatchers in Drake or Tewksbury would know where Kate's Corner is. I don't know. So that's only my input.
All right, thank you. Again, we have a motion to end the public discussion, or we'll just end it?
It's not a public hearing, so we don't need one.
All right. Again, we thank you for participation, and hopefully you'll come to us again. And if you know some friends who have any concerns about this either way, please have them call us. Thank you.
Town manager, bid awards.
We now have the town manager with bid awards, finally.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 3 items for bid awards. The first one has to do with Chelmsford Telemedia, HD cameras and accessories. And I'm going to ask Mike McCall, my assistant who handled this, to provide the board with their recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, on behalf of Chelmsford Telemedia, I issued an invitation for bids. We had numerous inquiries, but when it came down to the bid opening, we received 2 bids, went over the qualifications. They were known entities to Telemedia. However, in this case, as opposed to an RFP, we're looking for the lowest best price. And as you can see from the 2 bids that came in from Heartland Video Systems and Access AV, Access AV had the lowest total bid price for $146,299. And just in case there's any questions, what they're looking to do is replace 4 of their high definition digital cameras that have to be situated so that they can be used both in the studio and outside for sporting events. So they had certain qualifications and specifications that were needed. These cameras run around $50,000, and so the money that was allocated was approximately $200,000, and the bids came in this price range under $150,000. So I would respectfully request your approval on the bid to Access AV for $146,299.
Was the original estimate $200,000?
Well, that was the money that they put aside in anticipation of the bid.
Any questions? You have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the bid award for the Chelmsford Telemedia HD cameras to Access AV in the amount of $146,299.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next one has to do with the Merrimack River Stabilization Project after Wellman Avenue. August 1st was the bid deadline. 9 proposals were received, and the low responsive bidder was Sumco of $2,768,806. We checked references on this company. They have experience. They did a similar project in Haverhill, and so we're seeking the board's confirmation to award the contract to Sumco at the submitted price of the $2,768,806 for this project. We have been in touch with FEMA. They assure us that this project will be completed with this award awarded this evening. So we'd seek your action.
Has the town had any direct experience with this particular company?
We've not had direct experience with them, but the folks at MEMA, who we've worked with in partnership to develop this project, have had direct experience with them on as I said, a project in Haverhill. Good experience, good reference checks, and so we're confident that this company knows what they're bidding and can do the project within the bid price.
It does seem unusual that the prices are so disparate.
Yeah, it just shows you the market that's out there now. The range of bids just shows you what's out there. But this, we confirmed and checked. It falls within the estimate for the project costs, and so it is a viable one. What you often see, and particularly the high numbers, is these are companies who have work, but they're going to throw in a bid in an effort of getting a extremely profitable project. But obviously that's not the case here.
What's the approach they're using to stabilize the bank?
In terms of how they,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Rip wrap, they're gonna rip wrap.
Yeah, they're gonna rip wrap,
They pour a cement footing
yeah.
in the water, and they back up to that cement footing at a 30-degree grade. And in the end, they plant some native vegetation to solidify it over a period of time, and they take down all the trees that are falling in that area.
Leave the roots, though.
And they don't work during the high water season, which is like April to August. If this contract is awarded, you'll see them out there working this fall and getting starting.
Be on a barge, they'll be working off a barge, working in.
Right, they do very little from the bank side.
Right.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the bid award for the Merrimack Riverbank Stabilization Project to Sumco in the amount of $2,768,806 even.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, members of the board.
5-0. I just want to mention that, you know, I am, as a resident of Williamsburg, we will benefit from this ultimately. It's been a long process, and I just want to acknowledge that we have one of the present members of the board, Judge Dixon, who started out with this project along with Jimmy Lane and worked hard over a number of years, stayed the course, and it's finally come to fruition. So, thank you, Judge.
Welcome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The final bid award is for water fountain replacement at the Chelmsford Public Schools. This project was bid by Facilities Department, Division of Public Works. 2 quotes were received. We're recommending and requesting the board's confirmation of the bid award to Cashman Plumbing in the amount of $16,120. This as an overall project, has a $75,000 budget. It's about $45,000 in materials to do 42 fountains across the school district, and then obviously the 16 goes to the 45, and so that will leave us with a contingency in the event that, you know, some unforeseen issues arrive. You remember, this is the whole concern about getting lead out of the water fountains in the schools, so this is a public health project.
Was this on the facilities list of improvements?
This goes back to a separate issue when the whole issue of lead and water issues came out in Michigan, and so this was an accelerated project that was even outside the scope of that.
Do you have a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the bid award for the water fountain replacement to Cashman Plumbing for in the amount of $6,120. $16,120. Sorry.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next, we have town manager reports.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item was the citizen petition warrant articles, but you heard that during open session, so I'm not going to repeat that. The 2 petition articles had to do with the polystyrene/styrofoam containers prohibition, single use, as well as the requested prohibition of plastic straws and stirrers. So what I did provide for the board is a revised draft of the fall annual town meeting warrant list of articles. Right now, we have 23 articles. At your next meeting in 4 weeks, you will sign the warrant for the fall annual town meeting, because that'll be September 10th, and that will give the Finance Committee a few weeks to hold their hearings and get their recommendations and print it in a report that will really go out the 1st of October, because town meeting's October 15th.
Will we be going through those
You will then-
items
you will
tonight?
then-
Will we be going through it quickly through those items tonight?
I can if you'd like, but the way it will happen is after you sign the warrant on the 10th, you would have 2 other meetings after that on the 24th and October 1st, to which the board to make its recommendations to the town meeting. So if you'd like, I can walk you through these and describe what they
I
are.
just have some questions on some of them in relation to just the wording or what the anticipated need is.
Sure.
I don't
Just
need
let
to
me
go
know.
through the whole list.
Okay. I'll quickly, you can stop me. First one, reports of town officers standard. Second, funding for collective bargaining agreements in the event we resolve our labor disputes with the 2 police unions prior to the October 15th town meeting. At this point, again, no action. Third one would be the amendments to the fiscal year 19 operating budget. I don't see anything major at this point in time. We keep that as a placeholder. We are having some discussions with Board of Health regarding their ability to do food service inspections, and so I know something will be coming from there. But again, as we heard earlier, we have $130 some odd million budget. It really won't be anything of approaching hundreds of thousands of dollars, certainly not. The next one is the Stormwater Management Enterprise Fund. As we know, that became effective on July 1st and October 1st, which is not that far away from now, unfortunately, is the deadline for the submission of the notice of intents. I know NIMCOG is continuing to give support to the communities in terms of getting this work done. We are processing ours along. We will meet the submittal, but we also have to conform to the new requirements regarding water sampling, street sweeping, and so forth. So again, it will really be a budget that will become effective on January 1st, and then it will become effective in the surcharge on the sewer bills on January 1st. So it's going to be a half-year budget in that ramp-up stage that we saw left town
When
meeting
will
with.
there be a number in there?
We'll have that for you at your September meeting. Probably the 24th, we'll have it definitively, because we'll also present it to the Finance Committee at that same time. So we may have it for the 10th, but it'll definitely by the 24th.
All right. So we will vote the article as being on the warrant.
Oh, yeah.
The monies will still be.
Right, it'll just be a sum of money. Right now, it's just a sum of money, that's correct. Article 5 is the board's request to seek funding from town meeting for a study of municipal emergency ambulance service and fire station consolidation.
Again, that money, this specific number will be in that same timeframe.
There are no numbers on the table at this point in time. Go ahead.
So after talking to several companies that do this sort of consulting work, I can give you a ballpark. Would that be helpful?
Sure, yes, definitely.
So the one I talked to that was the most communicative estimated at the absolute top, it would be $75,000.
Okay.
So, and they thought that was, they were trying to think of all the bells and whistles that you could possibly option in for this. But it should come in below that.
Okay, and if you could give a scope of work, because the Finance Committee as well as the town meeting, they don't want to know what do you receive for the $75,000?
So, several meetings back, I actually had included that as a piece. They sent us a rough draft. They sent us sort of a standard list of what they do, and they have a group pricing option.
I do recall seeing that.
For municipalities, so that's actually already a public document.
Okay, so we'll go with that.
We can obviously put that in as well with the town meeting warrant, but it covered the scope of things, and because they have a group pricing option for municipalities, their rates were much better than the other, I think, 3 companies I spoke to. So,
thank you. The next article, Article 6, is a request that came from Selectman Lefebvre at the last meeting about placing an article on the warrant to provide some operational support funding for the Chelmsford Center for the Arts. So I've added that to the warrant.
I think we would be remiss if we didn't also include the North Town Hall. They're both serving the town. And I wanted to see if we could have both directors come in and make a presentation to us about what their mission statement is, because they're slightly different. What they would do if they were provided some additional monies, and kind of what their expenses are, so that we can get some flavor for, what they do and what their needs might be.
Did you want to combine it as one warrant for
Yes.
both?
Yeah,
or two
one for
separate
both, and we
warrants?
would assign a certain monies for each of them.
Okay, we can do that.
Or do you think they should be 2?
Well, you know how things in this town works. If it gets shut down, they shut everybody down. But if you have 2, you have a chance of getting one by. But I don't know.
How do you feel?
I feel like if you support one, you support the other. They do serve different functions. I feel like the CCA is on all of our pictures. Like it is, it's higher visibility, but they do both serve different functions.
Well, I talked to both directors. One, the Center for the Arts raises around $100,000. They both break even. They don't have any monies left over. The Center for the Arts raises about $100,000. The North Chelmsford Hall raises about $25,000, so a much less budget. But the mission of both of them is entirely different. And if we're going to aid one, I think we should aid the other, but not the same, because they don't have the same kind of aggressive programs. And some of the one over the other may say that they would use the money to help raise more money so that they would be more sufficient. So, should we have them separate, or should we have them on the same bill? If you have them on the same bill, if they both, one goes down because they don't like that one, they both go down. How do you feel about it, Pat?
Well, on the other hand, you could have separate numbers for each of them, and they can always be modified, amended at town meeting, if
If you write it that way, if you write the numbers in, right?
right.
That's true.
So
I would
I would be okay with
distinguish the
having.
numbers and state that this would not be equal funding because they do not serve,
Right.
there is a disparity in their budgets because of what they do, so.
And they have different goals in the town.
They really do.
And
No,
that's,
they're-
that would be part of the mission statement, and maybe they come to town meeting and each, talks about exactly what they do.
The common factor is that they're big buildings that the town has a stake in. Like that is the common thing, so,
And they both are part of what makes Chelmsford, Chelmsford.
yes.
So,
But to be clear, that the town covers the maintenance and expense of the big buildings. This is just funding.
not utilities.
No, not utilities, but it covers the roofs and the, correct, Paul, the painting, the upkeep, the.
Right. We also provide the operational support, such as we do the inspections on the elevators and the furnaces and the insurance and so forth. So we not only provide the capital infrastructure, we also provide the operational support for both of those facilities.
Well, I
Basically,
think, I think
they're
the
asked
bottom line is, we propose it, and town meeting will decide whether it's
Okay.
something they want to spend
Fair
money
enough.
on.
Okay. So it'll be one article, and then the motion will be different specific amounts for each facility.
Yes.
I think I understand it. Okay, thank you. While we're on this type of topic, Mr. Chairman, I understand you also would like to insert an article to provide funding for Chelmsford Open Space Stewards?
Yes, a small amount of money
Okay.
for equipment and material only, be administered by the town accountant, which she tracks those funds, that they're appropriately spent. Because they have a tremendous amount of manpower, and the Eagle Scouts do a lot of work with them, and so forth and so on. There is some preservation money that the Eagle Scouts go to and get money that way. But they use a lot of equipment, and it breaks down, and, they do fundraising, but I think we should help them a little bit in terms of hard equipment and material that they might need. But again, a small amount of money, but something that they could depend on and use in their operation, because they do, some towns, take care of all this themselves. We don't. They do a tremendous service for the town, and to help them out a little bit on equipment and materials, I think, is fair. Anyone on the board feel either way?
I think they deserve a small budget. I think what were you talking, $3,000?
Yeah, $3,000.
Something, wasn't a lot of money. I think they do an awful lot of work that they, and, they depend a lot on donations and whatever. And,
Paul, did they, I don't know how to word this. They're on the land at Sunny Meadows, correct?
Yes.
In Sunny Meadows collects rent.
Well, for the community gardens, we
Right.
there's a fee that supports the community garden operations. That's
How much
correct.
rent do they collect on the community gardens?
I don't know the number offhand. I know it's sort of a revolving fund where the money collected goes back into the gardens for compost and fence repair and so forth.
It's only like
in a
$50
few thousand,
a water.
yeah, it's not that much. It's,
Oh, wow.
it's a few thousand at best. Yeah, a
That
couple
one big
thousand.
family there used to
Right.
pay most of it, right?
Right.
I don't know if are they still there? That
Yeah, the Shays.
yeah,
So-
they're still there.
And there's no other land that they,
Well, they have Watton Street as well. There's community gardens on Watton Street, and then they have the other ones, and then George mentioned the Shays had a lease, and then obviously Jamie Durgay has a lease now, and then you got the other farmer growing the maple seedlings up on the hill.
Yeah, under the,
So it's under a conservation restriction. Okay. But for years, George knows this, for their marketing, they asked us not to give them any money for the stewards, because they thought that may hinder their efforts to get private solicitations. But yeah, we'll add this and we'll go from here.
does it
Okay.
hinder them in any way?
I don't know. That's not my call. That's Phil's call.
They're just getting bigger and bigger every year, though. There's
Yeah.
more and more.
There's
They
more and more to
on-
take care of every
Exactly.
year.
Okay. All right.
And vegetation keeps growing, it doesn't stop.
If we get any rain, it'd be, it would help.
I'm just wondering if there was any way where they could just get,
Well, the other way to do it would be funding through the Conservation Commission, because most of the lands are conservation related, or you could even fund it through community preservation and/or community action program committee. But it appears what we're looking for is a dedicated source for costs.
So do you want a dedicated source, or do you want to tap the already
Right.
existing funds and direct them to spend a certain percentage or whatever?
Well, I think it should be dedicated to their use, period. They do, I would suggest that we invite Phil in to talk to us about it.
Sure, we'll have Phil.
He may say, no, we don't want it. He may say, yes, we do. If he does, he will tell us what uses he might put it toward.
Well, I guess I would have a question then. Would it be like we would budget them X dollars and they would submit invoices to you?
Yes.
Okay. So
Right.
wouldn't we would just give them $3,000?
No, they would, up to that amount, legitimate, they have chainsaws that break down.
They always need some type of
Need some
equipment or
fill
whatever.
for some hollow that got washed away, that's an access to a trail, or,
You can never pay them for the work they do. I mean, there's so many of them, and there's so much work. But I mean, there's always another piece of equipment they could pick up that would.
We're turning blue over here, Paul, by the
I
way.
am, anyway. I have
I
been
wore my
since
long
7
sleeves
o'clock.
today, I learned the last time.
No problem here, we're not.
All right, thank you, Paul.
Okay, thank you. The next article is to seeking funds for Vinyl Square. As you know, we have the Vinyl Square Improvement Committee, where we want to conduct a complete survey of Vinyl Square and efforts for future projects in the square, and hopefully perhaps for submitting a project with the state for funding for the resurfacing and or improvements of the roadways through the TIP. But also, more immediately, the survey is also needed for the request for the committee to install portable tree planters because of the Disability Act requirements in terms, we need to understand where the right-of-way is and there's adequate space for the planters. So this will be a survey, and then in addition to that will be the purchase of portable tree planters in the square per the efforts of the Vinyl Square Committee. So that's that one. Next one is Vinyl Square Municipal Parking Lot egress to Watton Street. We have this on. We still have not been able to successfully nail down an agreement with the property owner for that proposed egress to Watton Street. So we'll leave it there. And I also have Mike in making update. We're sort of looking at other options as well.
So at this point, I've made contact with a couple of the property owners out there, and at least one seems amenable to working with the town. The problem, as you may or may not know down there, is it gets wet in the back. So I've spoken to Evan and Katie Messer, our conservation agent, and she and I are going to go out next week, and she's going to look at where the wetlands delineation is. Scott Ludwig, our engineer, has already drawn at least one proposal. We may have to come up with a second one, and as the manager said, we're just trying to work and come up with a conceptual drawing with the amenable owner, which may have to skirt the wetlands, and we'll see what we have by town meeting time.
May we not be finished by then, do you think?
I don't know. Or either I may change it to egress from Watton Street and not specify, egress from the municipal parking lot, not specify Watton Street. Because we may have to go out to.
Like the post office area?
Well,
There was a right away there one time, right?
It appears you'd have to go through a lot more properties for one, and two, and speaking with the conservation agent, you may run afoul of the same issue with wetlands replication, and it would require taking of a lot more trees and vegetation. So in theory, if we're going to go one way, it'd be easier and quicker to go out to Watton Street, and plus you'd have the light there.
No, I was trying to miss the square, everything coming into the square, because you could be there for the.
Yeah, we looked at that too.
Yeah, that's why there used to be a right of way onto Middlesex Street from the other side of Adams Farm. Looking at it from Middlesex Street, it would be to the right.
Next article is the required appropriation for the Commonwealth Transportation Infrastructure monies, that $5,000 some odd dollars. Article 10 is an article to obtain any necessary easements pertaining to the reconfiguration of the intersection of Billerica Road and River Neck Road. That project is moving forward, as we know. They had a hearing here, and they've received comments and provided responses. Article 11 is an article to reduce, transfer free cash, reduce the property tax rate. Article 12 is to transfer free cash to the general stabilization fund. So basically, by Article 12, the free cash from the community will be appropriated, as has been the town's custom. Article 13 would be funded from the Golf Course Enterprise Fund, and that would be for the reconstruction of the 9th hole green at the Chelmsford Country Club. Article 14 is a standard request for funds from the Cemetery Improvement and Development Fund to continue the improvements at the Chelmsford cemeteries. And then now you get into the zoning articles. Article 15 is a zoning bylaw amendment regarding Route 40 Groton Road from Route 3 interchange to the Westford Town Line. And as we all know, there is a public hearing scheduled a week from Wednesday on the 22nd. It will be at the Chelmsford Center for the Arts at 7 p.m. The planning board will actually convene here probably at 6:30 as posted on their agenda. They've got to do some other ministerial matters on their agenda. Then we'll recess the meeting there, and because of the anticipated crowds, we'll be over at the Chelmsford Center for the Arts. And then from that hearing...
Route 40 Groton Road?
Yes, because there is no...
No dates?
We were unable to secure space at the senior center.
Okay.
Chelmsford Telemedia is not able to broadcast live from the North Town Hall.
Okay.
And recognizing the anticipated venue and the desire to have the meeting televised live, we ended up at the Chelmsford Center for the Arts. And we're conveying that to the residents of the community and certainly the residents in the impacted area.
This warrant article is submitted by the planning board.
At this point in time,
Right.
yes.
If they decide
Yes.
that they don't support it,
Mhm.
is it still stay on here?
Yes, it can be if the Board of Selectmen or...
And takes...
takes ownership. Someone has to take ownership of it. And so even if the planning board is not the sponsor of a zoning article, they are required by state law to make a recommendation on all zoning articles. What we've traditionally done in Chelmsford is we've deferred the article development to the planning board because they developed the town's master plan and have developed our zoning bylaws. But you're right, if they basically said, we don't want to be the sponsor, then again, the Board of Selectmen could be the sponsor of the article.
I was at their meeting.
Yes.
As you were.
As
Ken was,
and
Pat was there.
And Emily
No,
was
no,
Emily was there.
Excuse me, Emily was
Yeah.
there. And although it was presented tonight that people felt that they got late notice, the notices they got were all within the prescribed timelines, were they not?
Yeah, I mean, yes, everything meets the standards. I think what in fact was the planning board sent out notice to all the abutters that they were going to discuss this at their last meeting, which was ahead of the public meeting because they really wanted to get the word out early and get some impact in terms of what they should be thinking about, what questions and concerns. So I think it'd be fair to characterize that the planning board sort of got an early start, recognizing the sensitivity of the article that's out there. So yeah, there's no procedural defect. And nor do I foresee any. The hearing has been advertised, and as I said, it's scheduled to take place on Wednesday, August 22nd at 7 p.m. at the Chelmsford Center for the Arts.
Well, the gentleman that came in and spoke, I think he made I watched it. I'm not sure that, unfortunately, I don't think as many of the planning board members, no disrespect to anybody or anything, but the planning board members, I don't think were as informative as, because they weren't, they didn't follow whatever the process was. If you recall originally, it was even before Mike was here, the original deal was that we were trying to do but we were offered a 40R there, right? I mean, it was proposed. And at that time, we were trying to get the money for the first year kindergarten, remember? And that's how we could have raised $960,000 just on the permits. And then it just kind of blossomed out a little bit. And I think, I mean, there were meetings and what have you. And I'm not sure as many of the planning, like I know the chairman said, we don't care if you like it or you don't like it. I mean, I was watching it on TV. I know he didn't mean
Not
it
what he
that
meant, yeah.
I understand. That's just what I was going to say. It just came across wrong. so it became a very emotional meeting, and I'm not sure if there was as much accomplished as there could have been, because it just got, you can't deal with emotion, you know what I mean? Either way, and I'm not saying people right or wrong, whatever, I just don't think they had I think he made a pretty good point tonight, that maybe we could get an extra meeting in there or something. Maybe the planning board could have another meeting with.
Well, we have 2 months till town meeting.
Okay.
At this point.
Okay, that's all. I just want to make, you know.
Is it, it could have got, it was kind of rowdy at times. Is it possible that we could have an officer there, just
Sure.
as,
I don't think if, well, I don't know.
you know, some people may feel it's intimidating, but at times it was getting pretty hot.
Yeah, and that's all. I think there's some misunderstanding, and I don't, you know, that's all it was. I think people were looking at it from 2 different angles, and they didn't realize, and they didn't understand it.
I think you have to realize most of the people that were in the room have not been through this process before. So for
Right.
them, it's very strange, very abstract.
I
They
mean,
were
no
trying
one's
to
ever
figure out-
talked about that area
Yeah.
ever before.
Well, I mean, most of those people are from an area that's not even involved in the actual zoning change, but, I mean, it's just, whatever.
I first heard about this 2 years ago, and, you know, disclosure, I live across the street from Monica Gregoire, who was on the planning board. So I know probably more about planning board than your average person who isn't on the planning board, because Monica would tell me things. So it's something that was on my radar, but I question the way that this was done, and I wonder if there is a way. It felt really like it was top-down directives as opposed to crowdsourcing and bottom-up. And I think that if it had been handled in a different way, I think that if meetings had been held sooner, with more regularity, with more space for public input, I feel like this was a shock to the abutters on the two dead ends that abut that area, and I think that going forward, if more effort could be made to engage the community at a variety of levels, I think that things would go more smoothly and there would be less of that heated atmosphere in the room. People were angry and they were upset, and it felt surprising and shocking. And I don't know whether that's because people don't follow the minutia as closely as they might, but I think that when you look at towns that do a better job, not a better job, but they communicate differently with their communities, and they have more community involvement and more active communities. This sort of thing, you're always going to have somebody who is angry and upset. That's part of the job. Like as a board member, we sit and listen. But I think that if you build more consensus and you work on involving the communities that are affected by these things, you end up with a better end result, and you end up with people feeling more engaged and better heard.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I think you're combining 2 issues that aren't necessarily co-joined.
Okay.
You know, I think we all saw what happened in Westford with the asphalt plant.
Oh, yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with the
And that had to
emotion.
do with the Board of Selectmen and the town reaching an agreement with the developer for mitigation from the asphalt plant. This is different. We are not championing this developer's project. Yes, we've been contacted by this developer for a period of 2 years periodically regarding his desires and efforts out in that area. And as we do with all sorts of projects across the community.
Every day.
We provide feedback to them. And I can tell you, one that we told them early on and was never adhered to is, if you're going to put any type of development out there, you do not want a road out to Main Street.
That's right.
And it was constantly ignored. That being said, once we realized and saw what was happening, that this developer was acquiring parcels out in the area.
Additional to the original plan.
Then basically, we we, meaning myself, the community development director, and so forth, basically said, you know what? We see something is going to happen in this community, and we want to get in front of this and ahead of this, and we want to bring it to the town meeting in the form of a zoning change. And I think the same process was recently utilized with the UMass West Campus. Once it became apparent to us that something was going to happen there, we got out ahead of it, formed the committee, did the work, and we think thus far we have achieved a successful resolution and still an uncertain process that's going forward. Right. And that's what we're attempting to do here. We're not championing any project or any developer. What we're seeing out there is twofold. There's an asphalt plant being built, there are residents who are selling out, and there's a particular developer who's acquiring properties out there, and we have an area that's being impacted by the quarry operations and by an insurge of traffic. And therefore, it came to us and said, you know what, we ought to look at what should we be doing in this area of town off of the highway access, recognizing fully that we didn't want to go on the other side towards Scotty Hollow out of respect of the residential nature and Vinyl Square neighborhoods, but clearly there's an impact on the other side of Route 3, and that's what this has become. Unfortunately, people are getting angry because of actions that are outside of the control of town officials.
Right.
But clearly, I think we attempted to do our best to sort of say, look, folks, something is going to happen here, and I think what you're going to hear at the meeting on the 22nd is, if what could happen with the current zoning and what we envision could happen with the proposed zoning, and then from that dialogue and input, perhaps there is a zoning thing that moves
Right.
forward in some manner. So
And
that's
then
what
as
we're
far-
trying to do.
And can I say that was a perfect explanation, and that was, it is so clear what the intentions were behind that, and the process that was went through, that you went through, and I think that if that had been broadcast and advertised in a more targeted manner to the affected area, and I live around the corner from that, and the only reason I know is because I've got a friend who was on the planning board, and so I think that if there were that effort to engage, and I put the blame on Chelmsford citizens too, who show up at between 9 and 11% to vote in town elections. Like, you can only be so upset if you're not showing up to vote. So, but I think that if the town takes that first step and really makes an effort to reach out and to explain, and what you've said is perfectly understandable. I think that you can improve those lines of
The
communication.
challenge is when to ring the bell.
Oh, I
I
know.
mean, we've had developments, some of which never materialize. I mean,
Right.
for example, the one by Brick Hill Road by the UPS. I mean, that's been off and on with developers for years.
Yeah.
And if we had gone out immediately upon that, we'd have gotten a lot of people stirred up.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Over
never
nothing.
mind.
Right.
Over never
And then-
mind. So
and then
that's
it becomes-
the
it
challenge.
becomes-
Isn't
crying
it true
wolf,
that,
yeah.
that changing the zoning is basically opening the doors? That the guy that owns the land, he may not be the guy in the end who actually does something out there. Someone may have a better vision. In that, when it was originally proposed as a 40R, the town was not at its 10% affordable housing.
correct.
And they could have just said, we're building out there, and we don't care what you say.
Much was the case with the UMass West Campus.
And they would had no say,
Right,
no say,
exactly.
no say in it whatsoever. And
Exactly.
it was better that the town, it dragged out, and now we are at our 10%, and now we can be picky about it.
Yeah, exactly.
And as far as the trucking is concerned, nobody did a better job than Mike did on that one. And you exhausted every law, every avenue, and the same thing came back that happened on Golden Cove Road that we knew was going to happen. You have to percentage, you have to provide access, an alternative access if you want to close down something that's, a business, if commerce. So, I mean, but maybe we didn't, we told people because they were all complaining, and then we hired a special counsel even to figure that out, right? And that's the ruling we got back from the Department of Transportation and the state. And maybe the people just don't understand that. And there's nothing we can do with that traffic. You say, the selectmen are allowing the traffic to go up And I don't know why they're going up Main Street. Do you see that much traffic on Main Street as opposed to Groton Road?
Well, we're looking at doing additional traffic studies, and there is some existing data in this area, and I'm going to be compiling it for our meetings next week just to demonstrate the traffic flow. There were some projects, and there's still some ongoing projects that will be temporary in nature, some longer than others, but not forever.
Up Main Street?
Well, up Warden Ave in Tingsboro, they were excavating a huge site to build some single-family homes. I spoke to Tingsboro officials that the trucking out of there should be done. One of the things that's been going on in the Lemeasure quarry site is they get a permit to fill in some of the holes. So some of the trucking that's been going up there has been bringing fill. They got a permit from the DEP to do some filling in of the holes up there, the quarry holes, so that they can utilize that space. So some of the trucking that's been seen is, like I said, it's on a temporary basis, but a long-term temporary basis. So some of that will go away. But there is trucking coming out of the existing industrial zone up there on Route 40. There is widening of Route 40 happening on the
Yes,
west.
on Route 40, but they're saying Main Street, and I don't understand why the trucking should be going up and down Main Street, because there's nowhere for them to go.
Well, you've seen from time to time, there's, since I've been on Main Street, there's increased traffic flow at rush hour. It's coming off of Route 3 ever since the widening. People found it as a cut-through. But I'm starting to see more of that traffic divert over around Nashua, the Nabnasset Country Club. And they're coming up and taking it.
Down Oak Hill
Yep.
Road.
So, but there is a fair amount of cut-through traffic for 495 that gets off at Route 3.
Mike, what's the measure, what are they allowed to fill that with? Does it have to be clean fill?
That's my understanding. I spoke to Westford. They said that there is a permit, and actually, if you use some of the Google Maps and look at the satellite pictures, you can start to see some of it changing.
But it's clean fill, not.
That's my
I don't know what
understanding.
are they filling, because they're still using the quarry hole, they're still going
No,
down.
well, right behind
Blasted.
Newport Materials, at the top of the hill, it's filled with water. It's my understanding they're trying to fill it in.
Well, they all are, that's why they get drowned up there. I mean, they're all swimming holes they become after you get down a certain way, you hit the water table and you get,
Paul, one thing that might
There
be
could be
helpful.
some of this material, like when they did when they brought in all the fill up in Drum Hill, it's probably that type of material that's tested and regulated by the DEP for use for, cappings and fill for these type of landfills and quarries, yeah.
One thing that might be helpful too is when you have the next meeting for the planning board, I found a few phone calls Friday, Saturday, and Sunday where people said, the planning board made a comment that they had no plans had ever gone in front of them and they lied. And I want it to be clear, the planning board does not communicate with town hall. And although Evan's sitting in the room.
Right.
If a plan comes to your desk or in front of you and Evan, that's not shared with planning board. That's, they don't see that. I know, I go to the planning board meetings and see what they see, and I just want it to be clear, they're a separate entity, they're voted in, they're elected officials, and they operate.
Right.
They
They operate on the open meeting law and it'd be put at the table in this room. That's right.
So I think that raised a little bit of distrust to hear them say that, but then.
well, that's basically what happened, that's just basically what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you, Mr. And then beyond that zoning article, there are articles, as we discussed the last time, on the display of the United States flag at commercial properties. Again, that'll be part of the public hearing on the 22nd.
If they decide to do nothing, does this disappear?
Same thing. We can.
We can do it. I'm meeting with Paul Haverty and
Okay,
Evan in a
sorry.
couple of days to sort of see, because I'm not so sure nothing is the desired outcome for the community, but we'll see. Zoning bylaw amendment regarding animals, accessories to dwellings, the better words, the chicken article, 20,000 square feet dwelling. Again, planning board will consider their discussions.
Question on that.
Yeah.
You got two houses.
Yes.
They're side by side. And they put a run between the two houses.
Yep.
Half on one side and half on the other. What can they have?
6.
6, yeah.
It's where they roost at night.
Okay.
He's our
There you
chicken
go.
expert.
It's right there, well, you know, them chicken laws really well.
The chicken run.
Put up a second coop.
Next one would be an article sponsored by the Planning Board for Historic Preservation and Reuse, also to revise the definition of multifamily dwelling. Again, I think these are just clarity and clarifying bylaws. And also, then you get into the general bylaw amendments, the single use of plastic bags, the styrofoam, polystyrene container ban, and then the plastic straws and stirrers. And then the last article would be street acceptances.
One question, in here, it doesn't say that there are any variances. Should it have in there that the
Well, first of all,
Board of
it's a-
Health should be able to award a variance if it's within, if they understand, if they feel that it's warranted?
Well, one thing is we can't amend it because of the citizen petition article, but that could be amended at town meeting. Although I do believe that the the planning board did have the ability to grant a variance to the styrofoam article.
I didn't see anywhere in there anything about, there's always. could be
Yes,
an
and under
exception,
section
whatever.
5.1, any food establishment or town department and its agencies may make a written application to the Board of Health for a variance from this bylaw.
But it was only for that one.
It was only for the polystyrene, yeah. It did not have it for the straws and stirrers, although they did exempt the straws and stirrers applicability, that, it
So is it possible we could reach out to the recycling committee and say you
Well, it
provided
wasn't a
this in-
recycling committee.
It's a
Citizen petition.
Citizens, but, well, the citizen that created it?
It
Not
was
now.
based
It's too
on,
late.
it was based on existing legislation in other cities. and
I mean, they
towns.
could offer to make an amendment at town meeting, but this form will have to appear on the warrant, as it's presented. And then, as I said, the last one will be street acceptances, perhaps Alyssa Way at this point in time. So that's the warrant. As I said, I will bring you with a final version for your signature on the 10th of September at your next meeting. And then the last thing under my report, next penultimate thing is the UMass Lowell West Campus legislation was signed by the governor last Thursday. It is now known as Chapter 192 of the Acts of 2018. And it has an emergency preamble, so it's effective immediately. So the next item that we would anticipate was probably in the fall. We will see an RFP issued by Massachusetts Department of Capital Asset and Management, and, after consultation with UMass Lowell, for the disposition of the West Campus property. So obviously, we'll keep you updated.
Can you clarify what section 6 is?
Yeah,
The
section-
beginning of that,
yeah.
it's very, it sounds like
Yeah.
Chelmsford's in there somehow.
Yeah, we're in there because under the special legislation, the University of Massachusetts Lowell would not only receive the revenue from the disposition of the West Campus, they also, in this legislation, will receive the proceeds from the town of Chelmsford's recent purchase of the Chelmsford Forum. So at this point, they're already $1.1 million to the good. That one we didn't see coming, but someone must have thought it was a clever idea, and it passed the legislature and the governor's office. So that's why Chelmsford is mentioned, because it references the forum legislation back in '98, from the town of Chelmsford having the right to exercise its option, which we already have. So there, at this point, UMass Lowell is going to receive the $1.1 million from the forum proceeds, and they'll also receive whatever proceeds come from the sale of the West
So
Campus.
they're going to get a twofer.
They've got both hands out. But that's the state's money, it's the state's business. Otherwise, it would go to the general treasury of the Commonwealth, and perhaps they didn't feel $1 million was significant.
Doesn't affect any.
Doesn't affect anything in the town, right.
You think that got snuck in?
Well, nothing gets snuck in. It was
Oh, yeah.
added
Yeah,
at some
so
point. I didn't see it
maybe
until
we won't use that term,
I didn't see it
snuck
until.
in.
There's been more deals cut since the 1960s.
Right.
And
I didn't see it about it until the last couple of months. It was never in any of the earlier versions. But again, that's not our concern.
Yep.
And then the final item under my report is the FY19 state budget impact on Chelmsford. And I sent this out by email, but I wanted to just, I guess, like I said, let the community know, and we've sent it out to the school committee and finance committee. The state budget was signed by the governor at the early July and is now in effect. And it was noted at the time that there was additional funding, particularly educational funding, beyond what was estimated that we had at the time of town meeting. So I provided the graphic that shows the revenue numbers we anticipated from the state at the time of town meeting and where they were finalized in the state budget. And it turns out we actually have less net local aid by the amount of $87,152 than we did at the time we adopted the budget at town meeting, despite the fact that we received an additional $51,000 in Chapter 70 education aid beyond what we had estimated at the time of town meeting. And the reason for the additional impact really has to do with the impacts of school choice and charter school students from the community. As you can see, the final numbers, and again, they fluctuate during the year, but the charter schools sending tuition significantly increased by over $250,000 was sort of the driver on that. And as you can see, the offsetting charter tuition reimbursement, only comes to about half that impact. So we ended up being a net loss. And basically where that comes to is Innovation Academy. The predominant destination for charter school students leaving Chelmsford goes to Innovation Academy.
We hear every year that the school department asks for a lot of money every year, beyond the percentages asked for other town departments, because they have a high-quality system and we want to maintain it and so forth and so on. At the same time, we have more and more students not going to Chelmsford. Is it possible you could ask Jay to come in and explain why that is going on? Because
I don't know how he's going to answer that. I mean, when would you like him to come in?
Whenever he wants.
Okay.
But the trend is continuing on. Maybe it's a statewide trend that towns have the same problem. But we have a very high quality system in town,
Right.
and we're losing more and more students.
I think the best time to ask for that would be after October 1st, and let me explain why. All school districts have to take a statewide census on October 1st of each calendar year. And that's the data that drives these numbers and what we have historic data for them. I think we could probably ask for that report and perhaps the superintendent to come here towards the end of October when those reports are available, and then see where we stand, and then sort of get an indication of trends. Now, we did have
Let's
then we'll have
have
up-to-date
by all
numbers.
means.
Because we did have a hiccup, because obviously the numbers bounced up when we added full-day kindergarten, because that increased enrollment. But now that is a year past us, we can sort of see where we are. So I would think we could probably do that at the end of October.
Fine.
And by that time, we'll be probably done town meeting, so we can probably do that following town meeting before we get into the budget season.
Great.
Okay. That's all I have for my report this evening, Mr. Chairman. I do have a few appointments.
Yes. We now have appointments.
Yeah, and I guess you can just do them in bulk. For a reappointment to the Recycling Committee of Rebecca Gore for a one-year term expiring June 30th, 2019. Cynthia Fikers, who you met earlier this evening, is seeking to be appointed to the Recycling Committee, again, through June 30th, 2019. Community Action Program Committee, Olivia Ventullo, for a one-year term expiring June 30th, 2019. Roberts Field Advisory Committee, Nikki Taylor, for a one-year term expiring June 30th, 2019. And then James Durgay, who, as we know, runs the greenhouse over there at the Agricultural Commission, would be appointed to the Agricultural Commission for a three-year term expiring June 30th, 2021.
You have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the, can I say 5 listed
Yeah,
appointments
that's the question.
that the town manager has presented tonight?
My second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Thank you.
We have one set of meeting minutes tonight from June 25th. Do you have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve. It's not here.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. 5-0.
Nope, I abstain.
Oh,
I wasn't there.
that's right. Ken was not here that. 4-0, one abstention. Selectmen liaison reports and referrals. George, anything?
No, not tonight.
Not tonight, no.
Pat?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. First, I wanted to mention about the tax classification committee, of which I have been a member. Unfortunately, since the meeting schedule was moved to Tuesdays from Mondays, it's wreaked havoc with my schedule, and I've been unable to attend several meetings. I've spoken to Glenn about this, and I talked to Mike Rigney, the chair of the tax classification committee, today also. My intention is to step down as an active member of that committee. As I said, since I've missed at least 3 meetings, they're over halfway through their meeting schedule. They plan on finishing up the end of September. I mean, Mike seems to be okay with that. Glenn, you and I spoke. I don't know if it's...
Yes, the goal originally was that one of the members of the Board of Selectmen would be on it to help them get started, because there were a lot of questions in terms of what was the intention of the board in setting it up and so forth. And I think all those were addressed. They're on a very aggressive schedule.
Yeah.
They have very meaningful meetings. They're bringing in speakers for various parts of the issue. I also spoke to Mike, and I asked him, would your committee be compromised in any way if you were a committee of 8 instead of 9, in that, Pat being a voting member on it, and she's going to vote with the Board of Selectmen, was kind of not a good situation.
Right.
So he agreed. So I think you should now be exempt from being part of that committee. But I do think we should still kind of follow what's going on.
Absolutely, yeah. I think we need a liaison to it, for
Right.
sure.
I have attended virtually all the meetings anyway, just to keep abreast of things, and if those I haven't attended, I've watched on TV. So I would suggest that I just be the liaison person since I'm there anyway. I don't know if anyone else would rather do it. Anyone have any desire to be there? Ken? I guess that's a no.
Well, I actually would like to do it, however, you and I discussed
You
this.
have other things on Tuesday nights.
Yeah, we have 3 other meetings Tuesday nights.
That's right.
I run from room to room as it is.
Right.
So.
So I guess I can make a motion for, I'll be the new liaison person.
So I'll make a motion to appoint Glenn as the liaison to the Class Taxification Committee.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Now, there is one other, announcement I will make in regards to that. They are planning on having a public session on August 28th, inviting all the town meeting reps and anybody else that would like to come and make a presentation. And so that still is on the schedule to do that. So anybody who's interested in coming and speaking to them. And from the last meeting I went to, they were going to maybe have some interactive part of that meeting too, to see what the feelings were for the people who do show up. So again, August 28th, I believe it's going to be here in 204 and 205. The only other thing I have, one of the reasons that I can't make the tax classification committee meeting tomorrow is that the Chelmsford Military Community Covenant is hosting a cookout at the Elks, Veterans Appreciation Cookout, from 5 to 7. That's tomorrow night, August 14th, at the Elks. Everybody is invited. It's totally free of charge. It's meant to show appreciation to local military and veterans. Come on by if you can. Have a hamburger or hot dog and just chat with folks who have served and thank them for their service. And there's plenty of stories that they'll be glad to tell you about their time in the service.
Is that what was referred to as the block party?
No.
Because that's a bad word in town right now.
No, it's not a block party. It's at the pavilion at the Elks.
The other block party's at the Legion.
Block parties are great.
Ken?
Everything I was going to bring up was discussed tonight. So I was going to give an update on what happened at the planning board, but we went over that, so.
What happened with the second Bellrica Road discussion of that development?
On the one at the corner of Scientifica and.
Right.
That was approved.
Yeah.
It was approved.
Drafting a decision.
And Concom approached something the other night.
Yeah.
Concom approved the conservation piece of it, and then it went in front of the planning board, and that was approved. That's probably the, I don't want to say the can opener to 129, but it's really, I think the renderings they did were quite impressive. I know the residents that lived, if you're looking at the building to the left, were happy with the project.
How many units will it be?
I don't know total space, how they broke it up, but I know there's a restaurant, and I think, I want to say 4 retail spaces, but the way they have it laid out is the building's kind of offset. There's an area in the middle where there's either going to be like a gas fire pit or water or something where you can actually sit outside. It'll be visible from the road. Again, the renderings were what you would see like, 3rd Ave in Burlington or somewhere. It's really
Impressive.
yeah,
Tell me.
really impressive. And the hope is that, and they're interviewing restaurants for the site. And the hope is that that's, what's going to open that area up. I do know, I was talking with someone who was looking for space in the area, and the realtor that they were talking to, they didn't realize I was a selectman. They said the realtor told me it was the up-and-coming area in the Merrimack Valley with a lot of exciting things going on there. So that was good to hear from outside the town coming in, that the realtor was really pushing him to take a look at Chelmsford in the 129 district.
Do you have any need for open-range chickens? No, huh? Okay.
But,
And I had already mentioned the parts that I was involved with, that I spoke to Susan Gates and Laura Lee and so forth and so on, and I guess that's it. Press questions.
Do I have to go to the podium, or can I just stay here?
Well, we'd like you to go to the podium, so you can't really always hear things from the audience. so.
Right. Okay. Sorry, let me just, I wrote them down. Okay, so first, are these town meetings typically this busy? Today there were over probably 30 people and it was standing room only. So was it just because of the
Dispatch.
right, the
regionalization.
dispatch? Yeah.
They're typically not this way, but they can be when there is a subject which is
50% of the time.
particularly interesting to the residents.
Okay, and then kind of going off of that a little bit more, you said that you guys were getting a lot of calls in about the dispatch question. Today in the meeting, the questions were typically against regionalization for dispatch. So is that the sentiment that you're hearing overall, or was that just kind of in the meeting today and then you have more of a 50-50 or whatever it may be?
From my standpoint, it's mostly negative. They would like it to stay the way it is, although there have been some positive as well that we should join.
Awesome, thank you.
I have a question for you.
Oh, yes.
We've never seen anyone from here, from Wilmington before. Why are you here?
Well, I freelance for Wicked Local, so I live on Hanscom Air Force Base actually, and I started out doing the Bedford Minuteman and then Burlington Union, and now I'm kind of just everywhere doing whatever. So Margaret's on vacation this week, so she told me to come here, so now I'm here.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
See you
Thank
again.
you.
Yes, hopefully.
All right, our next regular meeting is September 10th. And
51st anniversary.
what is it?
My 51st anniversary.
51st. You're going to be here,
When is
George.
it for you?
You can have a date.
Don't put
Correct
me on that.
answer is no. You're not going to be here.
2014, so what's that make it, 24? I mean, 1994. So
It'd be a date, George.
24? And that's my 24th.
Really?
Oh my gosh.
George and I got married on the same day.
You guys could do like a double date.
He had that idea last year, and I told his wife what he was up to. It didn't happen.
All right, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You couldn't wait to say that, could you?
Okay, I probably